This program was recorded on Monday, September 21st, in the year of our Lord 2015. The opinions expressed by the participants in the following program do not necessarily represent that of this station or its management. From the John DeVita Recording Studio, located in an undisclosed and clandestine location on the great northwest side of our fair city of Chicago, we once again are pleased to be presenting yet another edition of our monthly roundtable panel discussion show, Meet the Chicago Historians. Now here's the guy who started it all, John DeVita.
Give us Paratus.
Thank you, Rich. From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Meet the Chicago Historians on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, September the 21st, the year of our Lord, 2015. Today, the panel will be talking about the squared circle, boxing, and even wrestling in Chicago, and of course, much more. So sit back and enjoy Meet the Chicago Historians. And now here is our moderator, Mr. Richard Lang.
And let me turn the program over to our panel moderator, Jack Red Ryan. Jack?
For a moment there, I thought I was demoted.
Demoted? You were promoted?
Demoted, yeah. I was double demoted once. You hear about kids in school double promoted? I was double demoted. Anyway, yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to our special autumnal equinox show. In as much as today is the 21st of September, we have basically equal hours of daylight and darkness, and we are still for another 3 months descending into almost hell with all that darkness we'll be having. And the good part is, once we hit Christmas, we're on the way up again. And I know I've said this before, and Tom, you can probably bear me out on this one. 6th grade. Sister Euphemia, you missed the pleasure of having her. Doesn't that sound like a disease? A euphemia.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, this German nun, and she was basically a good person. She had a bad temper. She would hit you with the ruler, and then she could control her temper. She'd give you a holy card. So But anyway, geography. The question was. By the way, I'm half a German myself, folks. So no cards and letters. I'm not a nun though. I feel like one. But we'll not get into that part. Anyway, where was we? What were we talking about?
Sister Euphemia.
Oh, yeah, okay. Geography. Multiple choice. In summer, the days grow longer or shorter. I chose shorter because it says they grow shorter. They are longer. Once you're at the 21st of June, that's the maximum daylight, then they're descending slowly, but still.
Right.
Oh, no, she thought it was a bold stump or something like that was a favorite term, right, Tom?
Right.
And I was wrong. And, I know you said before I should know better than try to argue with a nun. But anyway, I'll never forget that, being 11-year-old little me. I was right.
Yeah. That's unusual.
Well,
You're talking to my wife or what?
Hey, I can tap that. Since the subject today is boxing and wrestling, I think I know I was in the 5th grade at St. Theodore, and a nun by the name of Sister Liguri broke her arm punching me in the head. Seriously.
Was that Genevieve?
No, there was Sister Liguri.
Liguri?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember her
Must
too.
have been a good job.
Yeah.
She took a roundhouse. She was. See, nuns. Whether I don't know if you guys know this or not, but in all the nuns' convents, in the basement they have speed bags and heavy bags. They work out, So she had me up against the wall, and I was covering up, and she was working the body for a while, and then she'd figure she'd polish me off by a nice roundhouse to my head.
Did you try
and
with
I ducked the punch, and she hit me right in the forehead and broke her arm. True story. And I was known as the kid that broke Sister Liguri's arm.
No, that was.
I knew I was going straight to hell.
Were you?
Did
Were
she
you?
attempt to sue you for her injury?
No,
It was
that
your fault, right?
No, but if looks could kill, she was about, I don't know, 4'9" or something. She was. No, she was
those
short,
She was a flyweight.
and she
Yeah,
right,
that's right,
and
yeah.
she used to, every time she saw me for years after that, she would just glare at me.
Yeah.
Really?
So in other
Yeah.
words,
That was
Tom,
nice
she
of
was
her.
tiny but mighty.
Yeah, that's right.
Tiny but
Mighty but mighty.
The were you giving her the old rope a dope
but
in the
I-
corner
yeah,
there?
right.
And where? Oh,
She was tiring herself out working the body, so she was gonna polish me off with a nice big roundhouse. And I,
now you say she was real short. Remember Sister Ildefonse? She was like bigger than Bigfoot.
right.
Is that in relation to Sister Mary Elephant?
Much bigger. But anyway, I remember when I was in first grade, I had Sister Cicely, who hated me, by the way. And it was
Everybody hates you. So
got me
what
off to a
else
bad
is
start in school. And I think you had Sister Ildefonse, right?
Yes.
Room 1 and room 2.
Right.
So Sister Cicely tells me to take this over to Sister Ildefonse across the room. So I'm so happy. My first time, I'm a messenger. Sister, here's that. You put that on my desk and get out of here. Oh. that was the end of that. Man, I'm telling you, that scared, when you're 6 years old. I'm sorry, I was 9 years old in first grade. A couple of years.
Well, you were there for 3 years. That's okay.
Best
Well,
3 years
Jack-
of my life.
Did
John-
any of these nuns
John's-
ever try boxing among themselves? They thought you might.
You know, a lot of people don't know this, but St. Rita, John's senior year, he was 4.0 the entire year, alcohol level.
Oh, well, on that happy note, we're going to introduce everybody, and this has been my old Tom McKenna, number 1, today.
What's that?
You're number 1.
Well, I'm number one.
Number one.
I'm number one. All right. Tom McKenna, retired Chicago police, lifelong friend of our moderator, John Ryan. One of the few people that actually admit to that.
Okay. And next up, Al Opitz.
Yeah, Opitz, former president of the Austin River Community Council, student of Ken Little till he retired. Now he's over here just irritating us.
Oh, jeez.
Ken, Little,
yeah.
sir, Middle Ken.
Rebuttal.
Yes, what's wrong with irritating you?
Nothing.
It sounds like it's a fault or
It takes a
something.
lot to do it.
Yeah, I was in the fire alarm office, and I taught Chicago history at Wright College for 21 years. We still get together occasionally every.
Now, how long did you give that doing that up? Was it just a couple years, or?
At Wright?
Yeah.
I was there for 21 years.
I mean, how many? Well, you never went home.
I never went home. No. I just stayed there. I slept, And
I mean, you've been a couple of years off that now, or
yeah, I have been. Yeah.
so?
When I hit 80, I decided that I would take
That's
a break.
that's much too fast, especially in the city.
Yeah. By the way, if you want to tell nuns, I had school sisters in Notre Dame. I can tell you all kinds of stories there. So we had, Tom, you were talking about that nun that hit you. We had a nun, and one of the guys tells me, he says, when she was in Germany, she was in the Gestapo, but they had to let her go. She was too brutal.
Yeah. I used to say the same thing, but it was like Paris Island, though, But we all got good nun stories too, and maybe by the end of the one we can think of one or two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a cousin pass away. She was a nun for like 45 years, and she lived. The trouble is, they go in right out of grade school. I mean,
Yeah.
that could be the seminary or the convent, and they don't really know what's going on. If every time you talked to her, it was like you were the student and she was giving you an order, an instruction with
Yeah.
homework or something.
Yeah.
And she just passed away at age 79. She left after 45 years and married some guy, some former priest. And so anyway, well, God bless her anyway.
I was going to say, yeah, lots of luck. Yeah. Hey, maybe that was her hell on earth, huh?
I'm not going to comment on that.
No.
We didn't see much of them because the family, my aunt with her 3 kids, they moved to Arizona a long time ago because one of them had asthma. Mm-hmm. And only they had twins, Jack and Bill, and this was Holland was their last name, and Anne Marie, and only Jack is left now. So, and he's 81 or 80. Yeah, he was in law enforcement for a long time.
You have to continue your introduction.
We are.
Yeah,
Next
okay,
up, you already heard from Rich Lang.
Yeah.
Rich?
Yes, I'm your announcer, Rich Lang. I've done some college instructing of modern European and American history, longtime student of Ken Little, active in local historical societies, and I'm involved in a radio group that recreates old-time radio shows.
Okay, and you portray Mr. Conklin, or
Pompous asses. Any pompous ass I can do well.
Specialized.
Mr.
Yeah,
Conklin was Gail Gordon, of course, on
yeah.
the on
Yeah,
this book
right,
show.
yeah.
Principal of Madison High School. And
Well, that
Ernest
was the
Brooks,
perfect. But I always had my picture of a principal after that. So
Miss Brooks, that sort of thing.
Miss Brooks. Anyway, and special guest star,
Yeah.
friend of the show, friend of ours for some time, Tom Weisvillis.
Yes, my name's Tom Weisvillis, and I'm out of the building trades, and I've been a longtime friend of John Ryan, working out with him at the Sherman Park gym,
How about that?
weightlifting, and I also trained at the same dojo he did, which is a karate and wrestling place, karate and judo place. And I was studying the fine art of pro wrestling with Tommy DeMarco and Buddy Pearl and Bob Saber, and guys that John knew when he was in his wrestling career.
Yeah, we
And
both
I'm-
trained.
And I was also very avid follower of going to Windy City Gym, which used to be on Ogden and Costner in the city. And I knew the trainer there, Sam Colonna, and a lot of his Golden Glove champions and several of the pros that come out of that facility.
Tom's the guy to go to about boxing, wrestling, bodybuilding, weightlifting, and all the gyms that were, what they were, and famous ones, the infamous ones, right? And the what do we call? We were talking about one on the way down. It's strictly like, well, it's not a lot of these health clubs or health studios. They're not really at all hardcore. It's better for fitness and all, but if you want to learn one of those arts, you got to go somewhere else.
One of my favorite stories about about karate and the old
That's his home call.
Yeah.
and the old Sanford and Son show with Red Fox. His son Lamont was taking karate lessons, and Fred says to him, "Taking karate lessons?" He says, "Well, first of all, Pop, it's not karate; it's pronounced karate, and I would like you to know that's the oldest form of self-defense known to man." And Fred says, "It ain't older than running."
That's cute.
That's right.
It's not as effective as gun fu.
That's Jonathan Miller was a performer, a British doctor, PhD. I'm not a PhD, MD, and he was also did a lot of like that comedy stuff, like with John Cleese and Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, and he was also on a show called The Body in Question, a PBS show about 25 years ago, and they asked him something about running condition. He says, running is for two purposes, flight or pursuit. He didn't believe in it, so. But I think it's more than that, running. Remember when, before jogging became popular, if you're out running, people would stop, they look, who are you chasing or who's chasing you?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they'd pull up and they ridicule, run you fat so-and-so.
Yeah, stop thief.
Hup 234 was a common one.
Yeah.
And finally, it came. The jogging came in. It's around that time that the term aerobics came in. I believe it originated in the Royal Canadian Air Force booklet on fitness aerobics. So, and you can take that to the bank.
Take that to
I
the
don't know what you get for it, but
yeah.
The only thing I know about jogging, it does wonders for shin splits.
well, fun you should mention.
Over a certain age.
How many replacements I've
Well,
had.
I still run almost every day if I can.
Great.
Run 5Ks. I've done some 10Ks. I remember last year I told my wife, I said, I'm going to run in that 5K. I forget, it was in LaGrange. And she said, you're going to do that? And I said, yeah, sure. I said, come on. I said, how many guys do you know my age that can still run a 5K? She said, I don't know many guys your age, period.
Yeah, there are no guys your age.
Right.
This fellow here was talking about shin splints. Back in the day, when boxers used to train, they didn't have all these fancy running shoes.
Right.
They used to run in combat boots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
running's
right, the military finally smartened up and let them run and what the disastrous effects of doing all those long forced marches and runs in combat boots.
Yeah, marches are one thing. When your foot is hitting the ground, I don't care what the ground is, soft or whatever, when it's hitting it hard like that, That's got to have a detrimental. What do you say about that, Al?
I did a lot of walking with different jobs I had. I found out the difference between concrete, asphalt, and wood floors.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a tremendous amount of difference if you walk
Yeah, I know.
long enough, because concrete has no resilience whatsoever. Asphalt has a little bit, even though it doesn't seem that way.
Mm-hmm.
And wood is a lot more easier on your legs.
If you can run in the park on the turf, that's the best of all.
It is, but the problem is that it's uneven, so you have to be a little careful.
Ankle twisting action.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new tracks, as opposed to the old cinder tracks, the new tracks have this composite. That I don't know if you've ever been on one recently, but I know I was at the game at St. Rita a couple days ago, and the track, you almost bounce when you walk on the track. I mean, it's so much improved over the old cinder tracks.
It's like almost a molded sort, isn't it? Almost like a foam rubber, not foam rubber, but something harder than foam rubber.
I
Right.
think they make it out of old tires.
Well, got to do something with them.
Yeah, John and I were both in the track and cross country team at St. Rita, and it's like I always tell people:
true.
don't judge a book by its cover.
It was never any good.
If he could run another, how many feet can you run?
How many feet can I drive? Now, one other thing you talk about the difference between concrete, asphalt, and wood is termites can't eat concrete or asphalt.
Is that right?
I think that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unless
You could always run on grass.
Yeah.
Grass is good to run.
cows run on grass.
Yeah,
Grass is good. Like I
they
said,
graze.
America runs on Dunkin' Donuts. Cows run on grass. Not that kind of grass, kids. Actually, you mean grass that we cut on the lawn and
long
Absolutely.
grass. If it's smooth, if it got a level surface, it's great. But if you have a questionable surface, then you got to be careful of your legs, because
Well, now we got treadmills. Now we got ellipticals. Now we got all kinds of stuff.
Non-impact workouts.
my daughter-in-law, she was a sprinter, and she did real well, I guess. Now and all of a sudden, her muscles in her foot contracted, and does wonders for not being able to walk for a while until you stretch your muscles
Sounds
again.
painful.
What
too.
did
Yeah,
she
it's
get,
big.
cramps?
Yeah. Well, it contracted and sort of caused your foot to curve inward around the ankle, around the sole, the arch of the foot. And she had to go to the doctor and get it stretched out and everything else. So there are a lot of
Yeah.
running is great, except you got to be careful, because you could get all kinds of problems with it. And like I said, the concrete is the worst of the bunch. And if you can run on grass, it'd be great, but not always available and always not that smooth.
Yeah, one of my daughters, two of my daughters are running, and she developed a bunion. And you think, what's a bunion? Oh, she had an operation, and she was laid up for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now she's running into, if you'll pardon the expression, cramps.
What's the big distinction between running out of doors for exercise and working out on a treadmill? You think a treadmill would be safer?
It's safer.
It depends on.
What you have on a treadmill, though, more than anything else, is you have an incline. So
Well, you could. I mean, you could.
yeah, so you
maybe
have a variation of surfaces, but
change the speed.
the other thing is you can hold on to the side so you don't fall
Yeah.
on your butt.
It all depends on what angle you're looking at. One thing about being outdoors is the fresh air.
Well, that's true.
And you're not going to have
the things
that
that
inside
you're
the
seeing.
gym. Yeah.
You-
And
you-
definitely running or just walking, taking a walk outdoors rather than indoors is
Of course, nowadays you could argue that running on a treadmill is much safer, given what some of the episodes that some of the runners encounter.
yeah.
no,
Well,
lake
but
and that sort of
and if the weather is bad, like it's cold,
Right.
we're going to be running in the
Exactly.
cold weather.
Exactly right.
Oh, you see some of these characters out there running and all kinds of weather, and you wonder how long they're going to survive sometimes.
Yeah.
Because, the cold weather is not the greatest for your lungs either, no matter how
No.
If you're bundled
stamina,
up. Yeah.
how much stamina you have and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I know there's a man and woman out our way on Garfield Ridge there, on Archer and Harlem that way. She's been running for years, and she really looks like a skeleton, a human skeleton.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
I think some are overdoing it. It's
But it's been just that way for years, and she's. I'm sure must be younger than ourselves, as we baby boomers, but she's with us still. But she looks like I hate to say, she looks like an anatomy chart for a skeleton.
Yeah, you know, you're talking about a little anorexic. But the my sister-in-law's had a friend. She liked to exercise a lot, and she got to the point if it didn't hurt, she wasn't exercising.
Yeah.
Right,
And the
it's
body
the,
says if it hurts,
It's a
stop.
feel the burn, feel the pain.
Yeah.
That can only go so far. You're not supposed to work through an injury that way either, because they're not going to make it.
Right.
No, if it's your body's trying to tell you something when it hurts.
very likely. Right.
You sure don't make it better if you've got because like Cutler yesterday, hamstring, tricky. You know, you can't make it better by going back out in the field for sure.
No, hamstring. No. Generally, you end up going to the surgery, and I'm not that familiar with it, but you do have pain.
Well, one thing I know for sure is, people that usually have low back problems, it's usually due to tight hamstrings and weak abdominal muscles. That's that people usually have bad low backs with that problem.
You had a week back, you mean?
Yeah,
Just about a week back?
about a week back.
You gotta have a strong
About a week
core.
back.
You gotta get those.
I used to have a strong back, and now it's called arthritis.
Yeah, that Arthur catches up to all of us one way or another, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I thought I'd take, since we're kind of historians here, going back to boxing, and to some, boxing may be looked upon with dread because it's a sport that has a purpose of injuring, if not knocking out your opponent. To what extent have there been over the years attempts to outlaw boxing? I'm sure local jurisdictions, I think in the days of Jack Johnson, he had trouble finding a venue to perform at times.
You want to take that question, Tom
Yeah,
Phyllis?
yeah.
Well, over the years, there have been countless attempts to outlaw boxing in various states, but it survives. And it survives due to the fact it's popular. People like a good competitive fight. And, they know the risks they're taking when they climb into the ring. A boxer knows how to defend himself. I mean, he knows how to roll on a punch. He knows how to block. And then you're supposed to have a competent referee. Some fighters, the big knock against boxing is some fighters stay in the ring long past when they should be, or they're not in condition for a fight. Muhammad Ali stayed in there much too long, and I think that's due to the simple fact he had a lot of hangers-on in his entourage, people he provided for and he felt responsible for. He should have retired right after that second Joe Frazier fight, or maybe even after the George Foreman fight, because he took too many punches in those fights. And then he continued to fight on, and he fought the hardest puncher in the heavyweight division at that time, named Ernie Schaefer's, and he took some shots. And when it gets to the point when a guy who's only had 7 pro fights, Leon Spinks, could beat you in 15 rounds, even if it was a split decision, it was way time to leave.
I remember he fought, what did you say, after that period, Larry Holmes one time.
Oh,
That
should have never
It was
happened.
pathetic, yeah.
Well, you got to look back, though. Boxing went all the way back to the Olympics in Greece. So
Long history,
it's
sure.
a long history, although rules have changed. But it was always a brutal.
Well, like Tom said, it's popular. And if
Yeah.
it's popular, the biggest draws out in Las Vegas are championship fights.
Well, they don't.
And now with our new immigrant community, they are big boxing fans. So I don't see
it's a cheap-
anything on the horizon that's going to be outlawed.
Did Chicago ever come close to outlawing boxing? I don't know.
I don't believe so.
They don't have any major boxing sports here that I know of.
There was quite a bit of interest in
one time.
boxing in Chicago, and as a matter of fact, I believe Cellular Field has a big boxing card
Right.
once a year. And for a while, when former heavyweight boxing champion from Chicago, Ernie Terrell, was promoting boxing in Countryside. And there was quite a bit of boxing. There was quite a bit of, on an amateur and a professional level, interest in Chicago.
They were doing it for a while at the Aragon Ballroom, I know,
Really?
a few years
Were
back.
they? Oh, yeah, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of the amateurs though will wear head guards, stuff like that, and so you have a little bit more protection. And And like you said, though, I think Soldier Field had a big boxing match a few years, and then also Marigold Gardens was another one.
Well, Comiskey Park. I mean, Joe Louis won the World's Championship there when he beat James Braddock. And
Yeah.
Floyd Patterson won the World's title into Chicago Stadium when he beat Archie Moore. And Sonny Liston beat Floyd Patterson. And Rocky Marciano beat Jersey Joe Walcott in the stadium. We had, over the years, we had a lot of boxing in Chicago.
Yeah, you're talking about
And famous-
Marciano. He was always considered the greatest boxer ever. I'm not sure if that's always true or not.
Well, I think
Who's
we
the
could go
greatest?
with this one forever. Who's the
Yeah.
best in what era?
Yeah.
The thing about Rocky Marciano, I have never seen a more determined fighter in my life. He went 49-0, 43 knockouts. But to compare him with this guy against this guy,
Yeah.
styles make
Different
fights.
eras.
Styles make fights. There's different styles, different fighters, different eras. It's very hard to compare that.
Well, Marciano did fight out of a crouch, didn't he? Was a defensive maneuver, like down low?
Yes.
And he wasn't. I think the record book said 5'10" or 5'11", and I knew three guys who sparred with him. They said about 5'8". I met Lieutenant Russell Medea, one of our, and he's now deceased, now gone. He was a boxer. Met Abel Fernandez, the actor who was on The Untouchables. He was young fellow on the Untouchables.
Oh, he played the Indian.
Youngblood.
Yeah,
Youngblood.
He was. I met him.
Youngblood.
And he
Rico
young fellow.
I think the name was Youngblood on the series.
I think you're real on.
Rico Youngblood, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, recall.
Anyway, and the third one was Toxie Hall. Who was
Toxie Hall.
a policeman in Inglewood. I never really talked much to him. I didn't see him, but the two said he about 5'8". And Marciano also had been a catcher in the Cubs minor league system.
Yes, he
Really?
was.
Very good.
Taxi Hall actually fought Archie Moore and Ezra Charles. One fellow who was a light heavyweight champion and one went on to be a heavyweight champion. Ezra Charles did, yeah.
And the guy, our field training officer, Tom and myself on the job, he's also to see Philip Burton. He was a light heavy and a middleweight, and he was still fighting. You see the guy, you think he was 19 years old, he was about 40 something.
Yeah.
He just kept himself in great shape.
Yeah.
He was never punched or anything, and he's gone now too.
I remember I was working with him. I think I was maybe the second or third week I was out on the street. And we got a man with a gun call in the L station at 43rd Street. And I never remember, this is, what now, 50 years ago?
Close.
And he said to me, yeah, when we get there, just make sure you keep your gun between you and what's happening.
There's a lot to that. That's the way of reducing it.
Has there been much of an evolution in boxing gloves over the years? I mean, was there a time when boxers were doing it bare knuckle? And
Well,
even before the Jack Johnson era, I think you had gloves. But have gloves of today really changed from the gloves of 100
not
years
really.
ago?
They tried the thumbless gloves.
Huh.
Basically, your boxing gloves are either manufactured by Everlast or Title, and they got a special Mexican boxing glove called Reyes, which is a lot of fighters prefer different gloves. I mean, for your standard professional fight, I believe they're 8 to 10 ounces, and the amateurs they're 16 ounces, which the pros would spar with in the training. 8 to 10 ounces. They haven't changed much over the years.
Anybody got anything to add to that?
No, but when you were talking about Chicago, wasn't the famous fight with Dempsey and
Yes.
Oh yeah, the Dempsey
Yeah.
Dempsey Tunney fight.
So-called long
Soldier
count.
Field.
Yeah.
the long
Yeah.
count? And that
Yeah.
was, and that was like 100,000 people out
103,000 in
there.
attendance.
What was that, Soldier Field?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Soldiers Field.
Soldier,
No.
single,
Soldier,
singular.
A lot of single soldiers.
Not
But
a
they got married when
single
they came back.
soldiers. Where do you draw 100,000 people? And in any venue. So it certainly was.
Yeah, that
popular.
was a rematch. Tunney took the title away from Dempsey, and Dempsey was extremely upset, to say the least. So he trained like he never trained before, and I forget what round it was in, but Tunney went down, and they just started to return to the neutral corner. Well, Dempsey was so thrilled, he thought he had won the fight, so he stood over him and taunted him, kind of Muhammad Ali style. And by the time the ref got him into his corner, 5 seconds, had gone off the clock, and it was just enough time for Tunney to get rid of the cobwebs, get up, and then beat Dempsey again.
Yeah, that was known as the Battle of the Long Count. And prior to that fight, before the go to the neutral corner rule was evoked, you could stand over your opponent as he was getting up and just beat him back to the canvas.
Yeah.
That was the reason for the neutral corner.
Yeah.
I understood that the reason was because of Dempsey. That's what I heard it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think worse than that, though, is you got it's more popular now is what they call cage fighting. And it's judo karate type of stuff, and they beat the hell out of each other.
Well, now you're talking about those tough guy they used to have. Those aren't around anymore, are they?
No, not
You
the
got mixed
tough
martial arts, but
guys. Yeah, you got MMA and you got the UFC and you got those guys don't last too long.
but they were called originally tough guy stuff. Remember those? And there were a couple of deaths, I think, nationwide.
Yeah, well, that was the problem with that. It's popular in movies because it's very dynamic and graphic. Yeah, but I don't know of any. I haven't heard of anything besides that.
I've seen some pretty good fights in the neighborhood.
Oh, excuse me, everyone. We'll be right back after these messages of interest and importance.
You got some.
Friends, are you looking for a place to have some printing done? Well, I have the right place for you to go, and that is the printing store in Oak Park, Illinois. Call or see Phil Berry at 621 Madison Street in Oak Park, Illinois, or call 708-383-3638. Phil will sit down with you and help you plan whatever you need printed. Now, his products are brochures, booklets, business cards, catalogs, envelopes, letterheads, flyers, invitations, newsletters, notepads, menus, mailers, manuals, labels, posters, postcards, price lists, NCR forms, sale sheets, table tents, pocket folders, and presentation forms. And the services include 1 to 4 color offset printing, digital copying, high-speed copying, graphic designs, typesetting, laminating, foil stamping, die cutting, and imprinting. And he also has a complete bindery service, which includes booklets, cutting, scoring, folding, numbering, padding, and drilling. So once again, for all your printing needs, see or call Phil Berry at the printing store at 621 Madison Street in Oak Park, Illinois, or call 708-383-3638. And once again, they are located at Madison Street and Clarence Avenue, just east of Oak Park Avenue. And it's at 621 Madison Street in Oak Park, or call 708-383-3638 and ask to speak to.
Now back to our special edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. Jack?
Our special autumnal equinox edition.
Yeah, we lose
And
and
we
we
were
minutes
just-
a day now
gotta
for
put
our
on
next
We,
month.
we were just joined by guest Ron Smolin. How are you, Ron? A regular on our railroad show,
Yes,
Chicago
good morning.
Junction.
Yes, good
and
morning.
you're also, you have an orchestra,
That's
big band,
correct. Ron Smolin Big Band.
and it is called the
The
Ron Smolin
Big Band. How about that?
The
Big Band Orchestra.
Yeah.
I use both names.
Which one? Orchestra? I saw that.
Big Band / orchestra.
Yeah, slash.
Right. If you refer to it as a band, it's cheaper than the orchestra.
Less letters too.
Use the orchestra. It's $100. It's $100 more.
That's like on Car 54. Where are you? They got a college boy driving with the two of them, and Francis and him are all busy talking to each other, and Gunther's left out, So they said, "You said so." He says, "You said something about Leonard Bernstein." You think I know who he is, do you? I seen him on television. He's a band leader. So made me think of it. Anyway,
That's
A
like
lot of Tommy Dorsey, Ron?
Say that again, sir.
A lot of Tommy Dorsey?
Love Tommy Dorsey.
Okay.
Yes.
that's like I'm sure you probably know have heard of Rich Daniels. I remember when he
Yes.
played with the big band machine.
Yes.
And one time he said people have been telling us that we should hire a vocalist, but we couldn't afford a vocalist, so we hired a singer.
very good. Now, getting back to what we were talking about before, which we're doing very well with the boxing, and Jack Dempsey is generally looked upon, here's with Champ. He was, as a matter of fact, he came to our school as a spokesman. This is when you and I were either juniors or seniors. Spokesman, before they had spokesman. I've mentioned this in other shows for DeVry, which was kind of a new business at the time. And, he said, of course, he said, many said many things. He was raised a Mormon. I know that. He said that. He also said, well, you've got a wonderful religion in your school and so and so. If you're not going to college, try a technical institute like DeVry. But anyway, he was actually highly criticized in World War I. He worked in a Brooklyn Navy Yard instead of enlisting. And there's a photo of him working, but he's wearing patent leather shoes with his work outfit. But he did redeem himself. He was an officer in the Coast Guard in World War II.
Oh.
Yeah, and he taught self-defense. We can't talk about Chicago boxing without mentioning the guy from Gary, Indiana, Tony Zale,
Tony Zale.
the Iron Man. He was involved a lot with the CYO boxing in Chicago.
Yeah.
I met him once, too.
Yeah, he was the referee at Rita when they had him there.
I knew a guy. He was a cobbler. He was an amateur boxer. He had glass wrists. Every time he hit somebody, he break his wrist. So he went to shoe repair. And that guy was the strongest hands I ever met.
Now, for the benefit of many of them out there, a little footnote. A cobbler, we commonly call a shoemaker, but a cobbler is a shoe repairman, correct?
Could be either one.
You could be a...
Yeah, shoemaker really makes shoes where a cobbler repairs them.
There you go.
I thought it was a pie.
It's not... Yeah, I was going to say, that's not to be confused with cherry cobbler or apple cobbler or one of those.
Sometimes the way they make it, it might be the same thing.
Of course, these days, are there even any shoe repair shops left?
A few.
There's one in LaGrange.
Is there one? Well, see,
There's one in the Harlem Mall.
I mean, you see every little business section. We had a guy at 63rd and Walcott. Remember that?
Yeah, almost every neighborhood in the old days had a.
But now you wear your shoes till they wear out. Just throw them away.
Well, they're all gym shoes now, so you can't repair them. But there's also a cobbler on Lawrence, just off of Cumberland.
Yeah, that's another in the list of disappearing occupations.
Yeah.
Every neighborhood had a TV repair
Yeah.
shop.
A fix-it shop,
Every
too,
neighborhood
remember?
had a travel agency. They're all gone.
Payphone.
Payphone.
Yeah, right.
One every 3 miles.
A
if you're
photo
lucky.
mat.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, this guy, he's a salesman for a big outfit, and he's being transferred. So he drops some shoes off to be repaired, and he forgets about it. He goes away. 8 years later, he's transferred back. So he goes down to the cobbler, and he gets the ticket out. And the guy goes back. He looks at his ticket, and he crawls up on every shelf he finds it. He goes, "Here they are. I'll have them for you Tuesday."
Yeah, right. That's a great line, isn't it?
Yeah, I heard that one before. But
They've been there for 8 years. Yeah, they'll be ready Thursday.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, going back. Chicago now. Golden Gloves, right? The brainchild of Arch Ward, the Tribune sports editor, who also gave us baseball's All-Star game,
All-Star game.
college All-Star game there was for years. What else? What about you know about Golden Gloves, anybody, Tom?
Well, I do know it's been held at various venues, mostly the Chicago Stadium. It's been at the Rosemont Horizon. It's been at the International Amphitheater. The last one I attended was at St. Andrew's Gym up on the north side.
Yeah, I think that's the last place that had them.
Yeah.
Oh, right down the street here on Edison.
Yeah.
No, where Edison and where?
You're Ashland. You're in Ashland.
Anderson and Polina, correct.
Yeah. Well, that was because of the priest there, right?
Now, when we mentioned Golden Gloves and old-time boxers we were talking about before, one who had all his marbles. Leo Rodak was a world featherweight champion from like 39-41 era. We used to see him downtown every evening. He'd come down and meet another old fighter or two. Frankie Frisco was one of them. They'd have dinner and he'd go back. He was a widower. Matter of fact, his son, I think, retired as a lieutenant in the fire department.
What was the last name?
R-O-D-A-K, Rodak.
Rodak.
Yeah.
He was
I asked
Ukrainian.
Bill about it. He said he was going to look him up, but of course,
Okay.
Bill's missing today. He's under the weather.
Yeah,
I don't
I
recognize
Bill
the
Kugelman
name.
does.
like I said earlier, my outfit when I was in the Air Force, about 59, 60, he was a Golden Gloves champion, and he was also an artist of sorts. So he asked me what I thought, and I said, "You probably have a better future with artwork than you do with boxing."
Well, that's like makes me think of the story of what was his name? Bat Masterson. He'd been a lawman in the Old West. He became a sports writer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He wrote up about, was it the when Jack Johnson fought Victor McLaughlin? You know, they did. Victor
I know
McLaughlin
they did,
fought, yeah.
Yes, he was, yeah.
And he says, I've seen Victor box and I've seen him act. You should stick to acting.
Well, you know, when you're speaking about boxing in Chicago, there were a lot of great gyms. Probably the first one that comes to mind is Johnny Coulan's. It used to be off 63rd Street, and there was one up, I believe it's called the Midwest Gym. It was run by Archie Moore.
On the west side?
On the west
Yeah,
side.
I haven't heard about that one.
Number
And
6
then-
North Hamlin. Yeah, you got to tell us exactly where it is because I lock in on addresses.
And then there was Windy City Gym, which was on Ogden and Costner. So there was a lot of interest in Chicago with the boxing gyms, and there were a lot of good trainers. There was Johnny Coulan, Sammy Colonna, Pat and Primo Lacasa, Tommy Farnarelli. There were a lot of good boxing trainers in Chicago at the times.
I know, maybe you remember, Tom, around 63rd and Kedzie back in the 70s when we were in Area 3 Traffic Division. It was a luggage shop. Davy Day was the guy's name. He also gave boxing lessons, and I heard he was really some boxer when he was younger. Did you hear the name?
No.
Not familiar with you?
We got a caller on the
We have a caller?
Caller.
Go ahead, Don.
Hello. Hello. Come in, Mystery Challenger, and sign in, please. Hello?
Not getting anything.
He's mute.
He's mute.
Hello.
He got knocked out already.
Are you there?
Oh.
We'll come a long count
I
here.
guess he gave him out. Gave up on.
No.
Hello.
Gave up
And John's
on-
still trying.
Well,
Cigarette.
it wasn't me.
Name that song with one note.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead now.
Got it? Hello.
Hello, Jack.
There you
Hey, who this?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Oh, good.
Mystery
good.
Challenger.
What, you guys gabbing about boxing and wrestling.
Now,
in
who would this be?
Chicago?
Don? This Don Figarelli, the Don of Sports?
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about that. I was trying to get hold of you earlier.
Oh, all right.
You
You know,
get-
I used to box. You know,
Uh-huh.
I boxed oranges in Florida.
I guess they won't use that one now.
That's going way back, huh?
Did you ever box?
I did a little bit. Yeah, at Sayre Park. I don't know if the guys know where that's at.
Where is it?
Sayre Park.
Sayer.
Sure.
We heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oak Park
Yeah.
and Oak,
Addison and Oak Park,
Oak
roughly,
Park
yeah.
and Belden, right?
Yeah.
I played
Yeah.
ball out there.
I had 2 bouts. I won them both,
sorry.
and then I retired.
Sounds good. Takes time to get out when you're on top, right?
Ask the guys if they remember the Rocky Graziano Tony Zale fights.
Oh, they were classics. They were the best middleweight fights, I think, of all time.
That's right.
Don, you just had the pleasure of talking to Tom Weissvillis. He's our resident expert today, our visitor.
Yeah, well, good for him. Yeah, Rocky. But then a big upset. I don't know if it was that in Chicago where Rocky Graziano lost to a guy named Chuck Davey.
Chuck Davey was that amateur, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I
Olympic
don't know
champion
about
maybe or
that.
something?
There must have been a lot of money on Davey or something.
Hey, Don.
Tisk. Are you saying it wasn't on the up and up?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I had a little skinny guy. How the heck he beats Rocky Graziano?
He was a southpaw, too, wasn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
I got a tape of him versus Kid Gavilan, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I say something about Don?
Ken Little, go ahead.
I lived in the 1500 block of Cleveland, and the family north of us was named Graziano. And
Oh, yeah?
We were living there for 2 of the fights. And, of course, I think it was the middle fight that Graziano won. Wasn't it? Zale had number 1 and 3, and Graziano. They partied all night long, with the Graziano name.
I
'cause
believe
they were so proud.
Yeah.
Well, you know something, Don? This is Tom again. Rocky Graziano was not his real name.
Well, I know. Yeah, it's probably. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
His real name was Rocco Barbello.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
And he was training, and he was boxing, and the guy says, "Well, what's your name?" And he looked at a bottle of wine, and he says, "Graziano."
Honest to God, yeah. I think I remember that vaguely. I got one story for you, but I'll let you guys go.
No, stay, please.
Back then, they blacked out a lot of stuff, boxing and stuff if they didn't sell out, whatever. So I loved Rocky Graziano. I like to watch him fight. My dad and my brother. Well, he was fighting Sugar Ray Robinson, right? I said, oh man, I wanted to go to that fight, but it was sold out. No, I don't know if it was sold out, but anyway, I wanted to watch it on TV. We drove almost up to Wisconsin to catch it on TV up near Wisconsin. Then Rocky got knocked out in the third round or something like that. And but that's how avid a fan I was,
Yeah.
We drove almost up to my dad, my brother. I can still remember that like it was yesterday.
Well, Don, remember now, at the time you're talking about, you had Monday night fights,
Yeah.
Wednesday night fights with Pepsi Ribbon Beer. Jack Dries did them. You had Friday night, Gillette Blue Blades, and it was Jimmy Powers and Don Dunphy, I think, was it before him.
Don Dunphy.
Don Dunphy were the announcers. And
Yeah,
so
you're
you had
right.
Regular network shows 3 times a week, and
Oh man, you'd look forward to that. I know I did.
Well, years ago in the Wednesday night fights, there was a father and son that used to watch the fights every week, and the father was an atheist. And there was a Hispanic fighter that used to fight quite a bit, and before every round he would bless himself. And finally, out of curiosity, the son turns to the father and said, "Dad, that guy makes a sign of the cross before every round. What does that mean?" And he said, "Son, if you can't box, it don't mean shit."
Oh, God, that's pretty good. All right, fellas, you have a good show.
Thanks
okay?
for the call, Don.
Take care.
Call back anytime.
Yeah, take
Sit
care.
down.
Bye-bye.
Didn't Rocky do a little bit in the entertainment field
He sure
after
did.
his? Yeah.
He was he used to play Martha Ray's boyfriend on the TV show, on her series. Remember
That
that?
sounds
He was
right.
in-
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was playing himself, but he was her boyfriend.
He must have been. I've never seen the movie, but I guess he was. He was from, where was he from? Brooklyn or New York? He's
New York.
back east. Yeah.
He was from Southampton.
From hunger.
Maybe even a little stand-up comedy. I thought I saw him do a little routine.
Yeah. Well, I know, of course, it's in the film, too, Raging Bull.
Yeah.
What's it?
I've never seen that.
Jake LaMotta.
Yeah, Jake LaMotta, he did.
Yeah, that's a great movie. You're talking about I think it was Fixed. That back in those days, you'd get the call, "Kid, it's not your night."
Mm-hmm. They said from what Jake LaMotta was, he wasn't a very good actor. Those fights, but I remember, Rocky, he did that. He was also, listen to this one. Here's reaching down into the recesses. There was a brief syndicated detective story called Miami Undercover. Here comes a submarine
Oh,
again.
yeah. Here it comes. Move your car.
We have a submarine passing through the studio.
This would have been circa 1960. Lee Bowman and Rocky Graziano was Miami Undercover or Miami. What was it? It was Miami Undercover, and he was the. I don't know if he was the comic foil for Lee Bowman in it or
He
what.
was the guy that was undercover.
Under some covers, anyway.
Under some covers.
Yeah, usually.
Lee Bowman was sort of a distinguished, good-looking, you could never pair off a...
Now, the film was just on recently. Somebody up there likes me with Paul Newman as Rocky Graziano. Anyone familiar with that? Ever seen the?
Yeah.
I've seen it.
That was the name of his book, and I know the guy. He did have some, well, shall we say, less than perfect childhood.
A lot of them, I have to tell you something, just to digress a second. And it was a fella that was a fireman, lived out your way, and he got into an altercation with someone around 63rd and Damon, and he sort of
Our old neighborhood, Tom.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about.
yeah.
What?
And I'm not going to mention, but anyway, I was in the fire alarm, and we had a 3x5, information card on everybody. Someone had done it during the Depression years, so we kept track of promotions, transfers, etc., retirements, and I had the job of making a comment on his card, and you know what it said on it?
Well,
Golden Gloves Punching Boy. So even the guy who had, made out the card actually was done by a fire alarm operator later on. He made some comment on the guy.
he's a punching boy. Means
He was a punching bag.
bad. Not very good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and he went, and that I'm sure he had dementia from that.
Well, speaking of 63rd and Damon, Max Merrick, the Polish pride, a Polish prince.
Oh, sure.
He had a club right there at 63rd and Winchester.
Oh,
Remember that
okay.
time?
Right.
He had been a Notre Damer, a Domer football player, boxing, wrestling. He was in the wrestling too then.
Wasn't he the guy that always claimed that he had beat Joe Louis or something?
Well, he did in the amateurs.
In an amateur, yeah.
Man who beat Joe Louis.
Yeah. By the way, my dad was a boxing enthusiast, and we used to get the magazine called The Ring.
The Ring magazine. Oh,
Every,
yeah.
Still published.
and he boxed a little bit, just exercise. And my older brother also boxed with him, and they kept track of all the, what was the French guy that came over?
Marcel Cerdan.
Marcel Cerdan, yeah. And they,
Georges Carpentier.
yeah, right, yeah, earlier. So I grew up with all those guys, and with the reading the Ring, because I look for the history on the
Nat Fleischer was the man who started Ring magazine. He
Is
was,
that right?
He was
Yeah.
probably 50-some years the editor of it, I would think.
At least 50 years.
Long
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Going back to Joe Louis, he came out to a sad ending. I guess he had too many friends that liked money, his money.
Yeah, his money.
He ended up being a bouncer, believe it was.
Greeter.
Or a greeter.
Greeter. You know what else he did? He had fights when he was in the army. He went in the army peacefully, and made it.
Yeah.
He said you should serve your. He felt that about the country, and he had some fights while he was in there. Charity. One was for army relief, one naval relief. He was charged the full. He was charged the full tax rate on it.
Oh.
I don't know how they ever did that.
That's why the government wanted
Yeah.
his money.
Yeah, but I mean,
He made a charitable contribution, and
yeah.
And I don't think he actually wound up penniless, right?
He wound
Didn't
up.
Very poor.
His tax bill was marked paid in full by act of Congress.
Oh, boy.
I do know that.
Yeah. Do you remember?
There was another one that had that same problem. Was Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. They went broke, and a lot of it was on taxes.
What division they fight in?
I think they
They were tag team wrestler.
Yeah, right.
The general entertainment world.
He was the only. They're the only ones that are in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So,
No, I was in there. I got a paid admission though.
Oh, sure.
but the tax laws have changed a lot, but sometimes they're more complicated. Now, every time you fight in the state, you got to pay taxes in the state.
We digress.
And all that other stuff. So
I
you
just
need
want
a full-time accountant.
Well, you know what they do? They too. If you're a major league ball player, you're making some good bucks, right? When you play in L.A. or New York or wherever, every one of those states wants a piece of it.
They want a piece
in addition
of it.
to your own.
Yeah.
Your own.
Well, if you're a hockey player, you're fighting each of the states. Yeah.
I went to the fights last week and the hockey game broke out.
Do you remember Joe Louis? Never forget this. It's a classic comedy made after he retired as a boxing champion. And he was champion for like a dozen years or so. He was the only heavyweight, champion that I knew of. And anyway, he was at a restaurant with some people, and they're waiting in line. And somebody says, "Hey, Joe, go up and see the maitre d'." He says, "Tell him who you are." And he said, and this was his comment. He says, "If you have to tell him who you is, you ain't." And how true?
Supposedly, was it Ali said he had a dream that he whipped him in some fight when they were both at their prime, and he said, "We even dreamed that you owe me an apology."
Didn't he retire for a while undefeated and came back?
Yes, he
Maybe because of financial reasons?
Yes, he did come
Yeah,
back.
I don't know what the circumstances were,
Yeah.
but
whether
but
he
I don't
just
think
wanted the
anybody
money.
wanted to fight him after a while because they all got the chills. I mean,
Marciano. He fought Marciano.
Well, he was trying to pay off that tax debt.
yeah.
So he had some fights, and then he finally got a shot at the title again, which was held by Ezra Charles, and he got outpointed in 15 rounds. He fought a couple more fights, and then the end came when he fought Rocky Marciano, and he got knocked out in the 8th round. That was the end.
And then he lent his name to a
Milk company.
dairy. Was it Joe Louis Milk?
The
or something
55th,
like-
and where was it? Wentworth or? I don't know.
Yeah, it was over there somewhere.
Yeah, I know it was.
Wanzer. I think Wanzer actually did it, but it was
okay.
a label. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was still around in the 60s and 70s.
yeah. And I always thought he was a high class guy. I really did. He didn't have the education or anything, but he,
As a matter of fact, he won his title right here in Chicago. He beat James Braddock at Comiskey Park.
Comiskey Park. Yeah,
You mean the Cinderella Man?
the Cinderella. That's a great story too. That movie.
Made a good
I
movie,
have
didn't it?
seen. Yeah, yeah.
Here's a guy. He was ashamed that he had to ask for relief and depression.
Yeah.
So when he got back fighting, you see him in line going to pay the money back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, remember?
How many?
That's true.
Yeah, how many people have ever done that? Huh?
I
I
would.
wonder how he was treated in the Deep South during his championship years. If some southern stations refused to broadcast the fights, if that much of that was going
Who
on.
was that? You meant
Joe
Joe
Louis.
Louis. I mean, here's a black guy reliving the days of Jack Johnson. How the Deep South segregation they wanted
I
to
don't
keep
know.
this guy out of the public eye.
Well, I know one thing. When he was down south, when he was refereeing wrestling matches, they wouldn't let him even go into a restaurant and order anything to eat.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know.
Which we never understood this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I grew up on the North Side. We didn't have that many blacks there, and none of them went to my school. But you accepted them all.
Yeah. Well,
And in fact, I at about 9:00 this morning, someone's ringing my doorbell, and it's the meter reader for Commonwealth Edison. I said, I thought you guys did this automatically or something. And I had to let him walk through the house, and and I let him. It's so.
well, that's funny. I know after
We accept them.
after Joe fought, he did a brief fling in wrestling, and he was terrible. He was just. I saw some tape of it. That's why those guest shots as a guest referee was pretty good.
Yeah.
In a big show, they'd have him or who else? Jack Dempsey did some of that.
Rocky. Well, one of them things about Joe Louis in the wrestling business, Buddy Rogers, who ended up being a world's champion wrestler, he's the one who got him interested in it, and he taught him a little bit. But then they wanted to push Joe Louis, and they put him in there with a real good wrestler to train him named Lou Thez, who's probably the greatest heavyweight wrestling champion of all time. And Joe's heart wasn't into it because he was worried about his taxes. And in one match, one of the wrestlers did not follow the finish correctly in a match. A wrestler named Cowboy Lee, I believe his name was, a 345-pounder. He stomped Joe Louis in his chest, caused a bad bruising, and he was never allowed to wrestle again because he was injured.
Is that what it was? I didn't know that.
I knew a wrestler one time. He used to own Zenith Hobby over at Irving Park in Austin. Oscar, I forgot his last name.
Meyer.
No, not Meyer.
Ooh, nice
But he-
try, Tom.
But he was a short guy, and he'd talk about it, and he did know how to do the moves, because if anybody touched him the wrong way, he'd be right there. And he was a character, though.
I don't recall him because I used to go into that store. It was a nice store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He closed it up, and he moved to a suburb of Las Vegas. And I forgot. His son was a schoolmate of my son over at Gordon Tech. And
Was he a World War II veteran, or am I thinking of the guy that was there later?
No, he was not that old. He
Okay.
might have been in the Korean War.
Oh, okay.
He,
Even
I don't know.
even those guys are getting extinct now.
Yeah, they're building a veterans home on Oak Park, just off Forest Reserve Drive, and
Oh, excuse
Hold
me,
that
Al.
thought.
I must
Hold that
call for a
thought.
brief intermission. You've been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians.
I'll tell you, the time is going by so.
Hey friends, do you need an awning over your front, side, or rear door? Or your windows? How about a canopy for your carport? Or a patio cover over your patio so you can enjoy being outside in case of rain in the warm weather? All you have to do is call Awnings and More, and Raphael Bogus will drive over, measure up whatever you need, and go from there. You can call Awnings and More at 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. So if you need an awning for your windows or doors, call Raphael Bogus at Awnings and More at 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. Raphael also installs hand railings for your front, side, or back steps. You must be safe when you go up and down the steps, especially in bad weather. So for awnings or handrails, call Raphael Bogus at 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. Call today for a free estimate.
Show. Now, back to our show. Jack?
Jack? Everybody's saying that around the club.
What is it?
Jack? Okay.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Oh,
Don't say it in the airport. Yeah. But anyway, there was a line in, I think, airplane, you know. Oh, hi, Jack. And they jump on him. Anyway, speaking of Joe Louis, that wasn't even his name. Joe Louis Barrow. But on the application he made for original, there wasn't room, so he just wrote Joe Louis, and it was, you know, it goes just as well, you know. Barrow was the family name, Barrow, like Clyde Barrow.
And Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't Robinson either.
It was Walker Smith.
Thanks, Ron.
That was his real
Oh,
name.
really? Wow.
Interesting.
It's just like Muhammad Ali when he,
Cassius Clay.
when he
Converted.
was getting, when he was getting married, you know, and so he's filling out the application, you know. And what's your father's name? Oh, Cassius Clay.
And how would he have gotten a less than masculine sounding name of Sugar?
That's supposed to be a sweet science,
he's
right?
sweet,
Because
yeah.
he was a sweet boxer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jersey Joe Walcott was Arnold Cream, his real name.
Wow.
Or Jersey Joe Walcott?
Sure.
He appears in, now here's one of the favorite subjects we get on.
That's cool.
He was in that picture, The Harder They Fall, with Humphrey Bogart's last movie. Remember that?
Oh.
Anybody remember?
I remember the movie, yeah.
Yeah, which was actually Primo Carnera's story. Kind of. I understand that Primo sued them, and he had some out-of-court settlement over that.
Oh.
For those who aren't familiar, the picture is on Turner Classic Movies now and then. 1956 or 57, as I said, it was Humphrey Bogart's last picture. He's an out-of-work sports writer, Eddie Willis, who accepts a position with this fight club to build up this giant guy from South America he's strong as a bull but can't box, basically. And so they go with a lot of pushovers and setups. And the story, Rod Steiger is Nick Benko. He was the BNKO, so you couldn't tell what.
Is that the one that Jackie Gleason was in?
No, that was
No.
Requiem for Heavyweight.
Requiem for Heavyweight, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to that next.
Right.
But anyway,
Who plays the boxer? Was that
what was his name? He was a wrestler named. I'll think of it.
I can't think of it.
what?
He made some pictures. He's
Mike,
really.
Mike Mazursky? No, it wasn't Mike Mazursky, was it?
No. Oh shoot! I can
Prim-
pick. Mike Lane was his name. Mike. He wrestled as Tarzan Lane. He was really a
okay.
giant of a guy. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Abel Fernandez was supposed to have the part. Abel Fernandez from the Untouchables. He boxed, and he was also an actor. He really did box. But then he is in the picture as one of the opponents who doesn't want to throw the fight, you know.
Yeah.
But they talk him out of it. But anyway, I don't want to ruin too much. Are you familiar with that, Ron? No? Tom?
No,
Never seen it?
no, but I seen the movie.
I saw the movie, but it was made, 50 years ago or so?
Yeah, more than that.
You said it was.
Are you familiar with it, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But speak,
Al, are you familiar with it?
No, I was in high
Right.
school, and after that, I went to the Air Force.
Oh.
Are you right? And
I wasn't even born then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right.
John, are you familiar with it? We're going to take a vote on this.
Yeah. Well,
All in favor of being familiar with it, say aye.
That was the class of what we were talking about before. Kid, it ain't your night.
Mhm.
That was the end of the movie. What happened? They built him up, and
Yeah.
then they
Yeah,
built
then
him-
they
built
sold his
him up.
contract.
Yeah, they built him up to
Yeah.
lose.
well,
Yeah.
speaking of Primo Carnera, he fought, I believe, in Chicago one time, and he fought a former Chicago Bear, George Trafton.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
George
I
Trafton
remember.
was a very tough football player. He was before Bronco Nagurski a little bit.
Trafton had a gym locally. He was a domer from Notre Dame. He was credited with the first center to use a one-hand snap. Credited. I don't know if he was credited with it. Trafton, a German name, by the way, guys.
I mentioned Jackie Gleason in the Requiem for a Heavyweight. There was a classic line in that movie when they were talking about boxing being a very noble sport.
Sport, yeah.
And Jackie Gleason said, noble, they'd hold him in sewers if there was headroom.
yeah.
And he's the manager.
Yeah.
He's the manager.
Was Jackie sober during that movie?
Who?
Jackie was notorious for drinking.
Yeah.
Oh no,
No, I don't believe
Uh,
him.
no, I don't believe that.
He had a good appetite, too, I imagine.
yeah.
Jackie Gleason was pretty good friends with Muhammad Ali. They were both in the Miami area at the time, and excuse me, that's where Cassius Clay was being trained by Angelo Dundee in Miami, Florida at the time.
Now, Rocky
And then Jackie must have had a showdown there, right? Yeah.
Marciano, with an M, the heavyweight, he had a program on that was filmed called, was it Main Event or something? They would go over old fight films. You remember seeing that ever? ESPN Classic has it on, maybe even now still.
I remember that
Well,
one.
anyway, he would have a different guest celebrity on. And one time it was Jackie Gleason. I forget what fight they went over. But he had an interesting story. Early in his career, Jackie had a job as an MC at some of I don't know if it was a strip club or a comedy club, somewhere in Jersey. And he came out doing his routine, and it was some heckler
Oh,
kept
yeah,
heckling
yeah.
him. And he says, okay, I want you outside. And he goes outside, and he goes to throw a punch, and before he knows it, they're waking him up. The guy he was going to fight with was Two-Ton Tony Galento,
Oh,
which is another name from that era. It was, I'm weighted a bum, right? Wasn't that what he
yeah.
said?
He's the guy that trained on cigars.
Cigars and beer.
beer.
And he fought Joe Louis. He actually knocked Joe Louis down in the
Yeah.
fight.
But he was a tough dude. He said,
Well, I understand though Jackie Gleason did, clean out a few clocks because
Well, Jackie Gleason did
he was
have
not afraid. He was a street
He
guy.
had a very short professional boxing career.
Did he?
Did
He
he?
actually fought, I believe, in the Cicero Stadium once.
Huh.
And he asked his opponent, he goes, come on, let's just make it look
Hey,
good.
have you
And
got
the guy
life in-
really wanted to fight him.
Hey Tom, have you got life insurance? that's what he said to him.
Well, another celebrity in boxing related was Bob Hope. Started out as a boxer.
Yeah, that's right.
Lightweight.
Yeah.
he had the name Packy East.
Packy East. Yeah, very
but,
good.
But Jackie Gleason was a terrific band leader. At
Oh, yeah,
one
he was in-
time.
he
Well,
was
later
musician.
on, yeah.
He composed quite a bit.
Yeah.
He was quite good. I heard some of his music,
Yeah.
and
Several albums here.
And, Ron, we were talking about, I was talking, my son-in-law, and Jackie had, I can't think of the guy's name, the trumpet player,
Bobby Hackett.
Bobby Hackett.
Yeah.
What a talent that guy had.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah.
But could he take a punch?
Yeah, he could take a punch. He had to. They didn't pay him in money.
What kind of punch? Hawaiian punch?
Hawaiian punch,
How
yeah.
about a nice Hawaiian punch?
Yeah,
Who eat digress?
oh, we do.
yeah.
A lot of people in famous were fighters with him. Dean Martin.
Yeah.
He had his hands
Really?
taped up. His fingers never healed properly. And
Yeah,
I didn't know that one.
Anthony Quinn.
yeah.
Think of some more. Come on.
Jack McGurn, who was Italian.
Machine Gun Jack McGurn.
Yeah, but he was Toro, I don't know, DeMoro or what his name was. And it's funny, they always gravitated to Irish names,
Yeah,
you know.
that's true.
O'Connor and Goldberg.
It was, you hear names like Jack Sharkey. That wasn't his name either, was it?
No, he was Lithuanian. I don't know his last name, but I know his Lithuanian last name.
You're supposed to know that. You're Lithuanian.
I don't know.
That's
his
why I
name.
brought you down here.
Okay.
You're supposed to know Jack Sharkey's name.
If you don't know, lie a little bit. That'll go
those
over big.
Those easy to read Lithuanian names. I remember a Lithuanian went to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor said, "Read the last line." He said, "Read it. I know him."
Hey, Tom, he plays center for Notre Dame. You know that guy.
Speaking of Lithuanian last names, you know, they got a lot of diseases, arthritis and zephalitis.
What's funny about the Lithuanian names, you ask a Greek if you can distinguish between a Lithuanian name and a Greek name. It's very difficult. They all have a similar ending and very similar spelling. Apparently, the story goes a little bit maybe was the fact that Russia was one time was a trading route between the Greeks and the Baltic countries, and so they may have
No.
left some of their language there.
If you own a restaurant, it's Greek.
Yeah.
That's
And if you work in one, it's Korean.
Well, they say Lithuanian's one of the oldest. I really don't know that, but they say they're with the Sandscribers, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the names may not be that old though, but the language translated to the names, you know. So
and they were very clannish too.
Well,
You know.
talking about the melting pot and
They didn't melt.
and different nationalities. A classic, we went to eat in Leica's on a restaurant on Western, and it was a Polish restaurant. So the guy that I'm with, he orders chop suey. it was actually on the menu. So
They
I
wiped
said,
it off.
Tom, I said, how's the chop suey? And he says, it's pretty good. And I said, only in America can you get chop suey made by a Mexican cook in a Polish
In
restaurant.
a Polish restaurant.
That's America.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. Let's get back to the boxing. It was having a lot of fun with that.
it's also kosher, so you can eat there on Christmas.
Anyway,
Speaking of the melting pot, there's a lot of ethnic rivalries in boxing. And for one of them was the Italians and the Irish. Oh, they had great rivalries.
They promoted it that
Yeah.
way.
we had talking about going back to Primo Carnera and that picture. The idea was there's a big guy. He could be an attraction, and that's the whole thing about it. And Carnera did. Who did he beat? Sharkey, was it?
Yes.
Jack Sharkey. Now, who did Sharkey beat? Schmeling? No, I don't remember now.
Yes, it was Schmeling. It was that period of fight. There was a bunch of nonsense going on between Sharkey and Schmeling. They wanted to abolish boxing at that point because one of them took a low blow, and the New York newspaper writer says, if this man does not win this fight because of this low blow, I'm going to move to abolish boxing. And he's a very prominent New York sports writer. I can't remember his name. It's probably in this book somewhere.
Okay, you had Max Schmeling, by the way, get to be a very good friend of Joe Louis's. Did you know that?
Well, I was going to say one of them actually covered his funeral expenses.
Max Schmeling did, yeah.
Was that Max
Yeah,
Schmeling?
he had the Coca-Cola distributorship for Germany or something, though.
Yes,
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Hey, how smart he is.
Yeah,
Like
but he
that-
was not a Nazi at all. It was just didn't go for that
He
philosophy.
was in. Which one of them was a? One of them was a German soldier.
He was German.
Yeah,
I think he was in the army too, maybe some special
I
unit.
think
Carnera,
he was
I
in a
think.
boxing match, I think, with representing Germany, and they thought he was going to be the savior for Germany, whatever it was.
The Aryan
He
Superman.
lost the fight,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I don't know anything else about him after that.
Well, the first fight they had, Max Schmeling studied Joe Louis real well, and he gave him a good shellacking. And Joe Louis, when he won the title from James Braddock, he says, I don't feel like a champion until I beat Schmeling. Going into that second fight, it was a brutal fight. Schmeling actually ended up getting paralyzed that day. He had vertebrae injuries, and he really took a bad beating. But during the course of the night, Joe Louis come to see him.
He says, I didn't mean to do that. And Max Schmeling says, yes, you did. That's what we do.
Yeah.
This is the name of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they became really good friends.
What,
Yeah.
was he knocked out in that fight?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that where they get the term, give him some Schmeling sauce?
Oh.
That was John Ryan that said that?
Yeah, right.
Schmeling salts, I mean,
Ryan.
not sauce.
I wonder how the German press defeated that Schmeling defeat.
Well, as a matter of fact, when that
Just had an
fight
off night or something.
was being telecast in Germany, Schmeling was taking such a bad beating, Hitler made sure that the radio broadcast of Germany was cut off. They never even heard it.
They didn't.
No?
Yeah.
Interesting. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, he was the pride. He was, like Al said, he was the.
And another thing about that, Joe Louis, Max Schmeling wanted to fight Joe Louis. And he says, I got to go to the United States to fight him. Hitler goes, won't he come here to fight? He says,
Yeah.
it'll never happen. And he goes, and if you want to go there, you're going to have to sign this Nazi propaganda. And the thing about that, too, he was upset because Max Schmeling's manager was Abe Jacobs, a Jew of all people.
Mm.
So there was a lot going into that.
Yeah, lots of undertones there. Yeah.
Well, things are never quite as simple as they might seem on the surface anyway.
No.
Oh, well,
No.
you got to look at the other fact that one of Hitler's henchmen was named Rosenberg, which is typically a Jewish name. So
It's German, though. It is German.
It's German Jew. Yeah,
Most thought would be of it.
yeah, but generally it's almost universally Jewish.
And another boxer that was a German Jew was Max Baer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
now that's funny. That getting back to The Harder They Fall, he plays the champ, the guy who's going to fight this Toro Moreno was the Primo Carnera character that this Mike Lane portrayed. So he was, in a sense, he was recreating the beating he gave Primo Carnera in real life, and probably was worse. In the picture, Max Baer was the Buddy Brannon was the name of the character, and he liked to hurt people. As Georgie Joe Walcott is a trainer for the fighter in that, and he says he's a bad man, likes to hurt people, and he's.
Was Buddy Bear the guy that Braddock had to beat to become world champion? Who was
Max Baer.
Or Max
No,
Baer?
wait. Maybe
Judge
it was.
Braddock beat Max.
That's right.
Max Baer.
Max Baer. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Max.
And he was portrayed in that movie as like a playboy and womanizer and all.
They
that.
called him the man with the $1 million body and the
Right.
10-cent brain.
Yeah.
He had two hotties with him in the room. They showed in the
Yeah. Right.
picture. The family didn't like that. By the way, for anybody who might be interested too, Jethro on Beverly Hillbillies, an old series, that was his son, Max Baer Jr.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
His name is
Yeah.
Bear. That's right.
I don't know how many
Yeah.
fights he had.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Primo Carnera was a better fighter than they really gave him credit for. He was managed badly. He had bad trainers. He had a lot of good physical ability. He was a tall man, a strong man. He had stamina. He just was never taught how to box, and he was managed by a bunch of gangsters out of Germany. Italy. Leon C. was his manager, and all those fights were fixed. A lot of them were.
And then he was left penniless, but he made a lot of money. He went to wrestling because he had done he was in some circus or something, traveling around. Boxer Russell, the local guy,
I know. Yeah.
he made big money in wrestling then.
Yeah.
Between 1940 something till one of the early 60s, right?
Yeah, they used to be one of
Made
the
some
things
movies.
that a lot of carnivals had was they beat the local.
Beat the strong man.
Yeah.
Wasn't there another bear? Was it Buddy Bear or something?
Buddy Bear, his brother.
That was his brother, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Joe Louis.
Yeah.
He was in.
Was he ever a champion or no? Contender all the time.
He was really huge, wasn't he?
6'6".
Huh?
6'6".
Could he slam dunk? Did they even slam dunk in those days? What do you say, Tom?
No,
Did
they didn't. That didn't start until that was a relatively recent thing. Most of the alley type guys, and they came in and did the pros, and then they went up there and grabbed hold of the hoop and busted the back.
Oh.
Without saying anything. They slam dunk. Before he had set shots and
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
the basket didn't have a hole in it. You have to have
Well, the way the world of sports is going nowadays, Bob Cousy never slam dunked, and Dick Butkus never wore an earring either.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people think that the slam dunk was invented by black basketball players. It was actually invented by 11th Ward precinct captains in the election, where when someone had their
that was a payoff.
back turn, they could slam a fistful of ballots into the ballot box.
Actually,
That was the original slam dunk.
that was originally by Al Capone, and the politicians took over.
What did Joe Stalin say? I don't care how they vote. It's what counts is who counts the votes.
Who counts the votes? Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, are we through with the Harder They Fall? How about the Requiem for Heavyweight? Now, that was a good picture. It was also on Playhouse 90 as a play before that.
Yeah.
With,
The one you probably remember, the Rocky series, and that came around with
Bullwinkle. Not that Rocky, huh?
No. That's Stallone, was it?
Yeah.
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 I don't know. I never really watched.
How many were there?
5,
Six.
6.
There's 6 of them.
Six.
Yeah.
You know,
Each one
speaking
was worse than the other.
speaking of that,
There you go.
Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder who fought Muhammad Ali, he sued Sylvester Stallone because Stallone based the whole thing on his life.
Really?
And he gave him no money towards it.
Hmm.
I mean, that fight where Chuck Wepner knocked Ali down in the 9th round, that inspired Stallone to make the movie. He goes, "You stole my whole life." He goes, in that part of the movie where you fought Hulk Hogan in the boxer wrestler thing, I fought Andre the Giant at Chase Stadium. You stole my whole life.
Mm.
So did he pay him?
Yeah.
He paid him.
Undisclosed amount.
Yeah, I mean, it was out of court.
Yeah.
So. I know that when Stallone was really suffering, he sold his dog, Butkus, in the movie. That dog Butkus was his own real dog. And so along comes the picture, and he sold it for $75 or $50 or something like that. Okay, come on, that guy wanted like $10,000 for the dog now. So they settled with giving him a part in the picture.
Yeah.
I think he was the guy, the short guy, the like dwarf, was cleaning up around the gym. I think that was him. How's that?
Yeah.
You'll be in one of my movies anytime, you guys.
Yeah.
For $10,000.
Yeah.
No, for a $75 dog. Anyway, let's keep going. Come on.
I never followed that series. I don't know. I
But
just-
yeah, well, it was like like everything else. It's very hard to have a good sequel. But I think the only couple of pictures I can think of, Godfather 2 was at least as good as the first, and The Bride of Frankenstein was maybe the best of those pictures. A sequel to
sure.
Freddy's.
Good point.
Don't laugh.
Reminds you of your home life, right? Okay.
Not mine.
yeah.
Anyway, The Harder They Fall. Then I'm sorry. Requiem for Heavyweight. Play.
Well, that was
On
written by
television.
Rod Serling. Huh?
Rod Serling,
Yeah,
correct?
right.
And the TV play on Playhouse 90 was a live-action CBS production in the 50s. And the fighter was Mountain McClintock, not Mountain Rivera as it was in the movie. It was Jack Palance, another guy who'd been a professional fighter. Jack Palance.
Yeah, he was played a movie star too. Yeah.
Yeah,
he
well,
was-
he was very good.
He
Not
was
a movie star, but on TV anyway.
No, he was pretty big there in the 50s, too.
Jack Palance, yeah.
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 Shane, wasn't that,
That was
the
his.
big?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a bad guy in
Alan
Shane.
Ladd. Yeah.
He's a weird looking guy, but he was a good actor actually. And
He was.
Yeah. Yeah.
He okay, so he was the fighter. The manager was Keenan Wynn. He had the Jackie Gleason part as the manager, and the trainer was Ed Wynn.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Father and son.
Yeah.
Edwin
Yeah.
was a character.
And
but-
he got some some plaudits for because he had been in comedy his whole life, and that was a straight role for him.
Well, Jackie,
he was Maish, wasn't
yeah, Mish.
Yeah.
Jackie Gleason, Mish Rennick.
he? Yeah.
Jackie Gleason had said, a lot of comedians become good dramatic actors.
Yeah.
But
They have
you'll
to
never
be.
see a dramatic actor who can become a comedian, vice versa.
Yeah.
So,
There's a few exceptions. There
Who?
was a couple.
Can you think of anybody else?
No, recently there's I did a couple movies that came out that dramatic actors, but the one that was real good is Neeson,
Liam Neeson?
Liam Neeson.
not Liam Neeson.
I have a set of skills.
Well, I know somebody that tried it, serious actor going to comedy, and he always wanted to do it, was Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
He said he got tired of playing God and Moses and all the rest of them, and he made a film called The Private War of Major Benson.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And
remember that.
Sal Mineo, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Squirt the Wonder Clam. He's in that.
Would you could also maybe even classify somebody like Cary Grant, who did comedy at various times.
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
he was. Yeah.
you know,
Pratfalls. He was.
His better pictures are comedy, but then you see him in something like North by Northwest.
yeah,
And there's a Notorious too. He's in. It was very
yeah,
good.
right,
Hitchcock movie.
yeah. He could sort of do it all. You know,
Oh,
so
Leslie Nielsen.
Really?
He always wanted to do comedy and stuff, but they said no.
he
You're
was,
this.
he was trained as a dramatic actor.
Good example of going to a lot of comedy later on in Airplane. Sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
But I saw him on stage. He played Clarence Darrow, and he was a one-man show, and he was quite good.
Who did he play?
Clarence Darrow.
Who played this?
Oh, Clarence Darrow.
Leslie
Who-
Nielsen.
Interesting.
Oh, I saw Henry Fonda play Clarence Darrow in Chicago,
Right.
and
But he was up there one-man show, and he was quite good at it. And
Yeah.
most of the time, you remember him as in comedies.
yeah,
And
He started out as a disc jockey too,
did he?
Yeah.
I don't
so
know.
that's a naturally got to have a comic flair for
he-
that.
yeah.
The story I heard, though, he said dramatic acting was too strenuous. It was more fun playing comedy, so he went into comedy.
Yeah, in a big way.
I recall one movie, Robin Gibbons was a comedic actor, but I remember one movie, and I can't think of the name of it. He had a serious role, and he was pretty good in it.
Yeah,
I can't think of the name of the movie, though.
yeah, yeah.
Is that good, huh?
Yeah,
And it happens when you get too many facts in your head.
unforgettable. Yeah, but I forget.
One actor with a great physique early on. I wonder if he ever did any boxing. Charles Bronson.
Yeah, he was good, wasn't he?
yeah, it seemed
I
like
think he may have. Yeah.
He created problems later on in his life with some wife beating or something like that.
I missed that.
But
yeah,
he
I don't recall.
he went down the tubes after
He
that.
stayed in movies
He
a
was
few
quite
years
good.
too
He-
long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was always the what they call the heavy in
Yeah,
movies.
oh, yeah.
yeah,
He achieved kind of stardom kind of late.
yeah.
True.
Yeah, he had been
That
a
series he made where he was.
Man with a Camera. He was in that
yeah.
TV series.
No, where he was getting revenge for people who beat up his wife.
Oh, the mechanic. The mechanic?
No.
One of them, like
No.
that.
Death Wish. Death Wish.
wasn't it?
Death Wish.
Death Wish.
Yeah.
Death Wish.
Now that's one where the original was great, and the sequels were like he turned out
Yeah.
to be like Batman.
There's so
He-
many
he
of
shows
them,
up on the bus to kill somebody at the right time or
Yeah.
Yeah.
bump off criminals. It was just but the original, they had such brutal scenes in it. Now Tom was a cop, and I was a cop for a long time. There was I guess it would be a rape scene in the beginning with the Bronson's wife and his daughter. And it's so brutal. It like made me sick to see it. It was
Wow.
it was what's how well done it was.
They cut it out of
Did they?
all the subsequent.
Yeah.
TV showings.
What's his name was one of the attackers, Jeff Goldblum.
Oh,
So it was that long ago.
That's strange cast.
But I mean,
Yeah,
the
right,
trouble.
yeah.
This was the thing about Death Wish was so on the money what was going on out there.
yeah,
Remember, he was turned out to be a vigilante. They tell him,
yeah. Right.
and
yeah.
they won't let everybody know that the crime rate is way down in New York City now. All of a sudden, because of the that's just like a business about guns. Oh, guns are bad. Well, not in the right hands. They're not. I pose this: which is more dangerous? 50 law-abiding citizens who are trained and licensed to pack for their protection and others, or one demented person or Muslim extremist with a gun?
Yeah.
They're not going to pay any attention to this. I like these no gun when you enter the store or something though. And they'll see
They know it's crazy.
yeah, they're not going to.
Oh, yeah, you're violating the law. Don't
Yeah.
you see the
Yeah.
sign there?
Yeah.
Or our Archbishop too.
Well, what I don't understand is if someone shoots them with a gun, they blame the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if someone kills someone drunk in a car, they don't blame the car.
No.
Well, you go
Yeah.
in Europe,
And
though.
they don't ban the car either.
Even where most guns are outlawed, you'll still see a few crimes with guns where killings.
Someone
I
wrote a
don't know where
book.
to get the guns from, but they get them.
Well, they'll get them
Well,
if they want them.
if they
want
want
from a
'em.
sports show. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I know someone wrote a book, More Guns, Less Crime.
Yeah.
Well, here another. Go ahead. I'll say.
Pardon me.
I'll hold the thought.
It's time for another intermission. You've been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. We'll be right back.
And we got a hallway pass?
Yeah, you get a hallway pass.
you need motor oil? Or transmission fluid? Or power steering fluid? Or antifreeze? How about the wiper blades? Are they in good, sharp condition? Is the windshield washer fluid in your tank full? How good is your battery? Do you need to replace light bulbs? Well, the place to pick up all these items is at Berkeley Auto Supply at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois. Stop in and see Tom, and he will get you any part or supply you might need for your vehicle. He has every tool, part, and supplies you might need from the front bumper to the rear bumper, from the top of the roof to the bottom of your chassis. You can call Tom at 708-544-8350, and they are located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois. Tom's hours are Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and he's even open on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's Berkeley Auto Supply, 5237 St. Charles Road, and he is just east of Wolf Road and west of Manheim Road, about 2 miles on the south side of the street. Call 708-544-8350 for parts, tools, and supplies. It's Berkeley Auto Supply, 708-544-8350, and he's located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois.
Now, back to our show. Jack?
Thank you, everyone. I hope you're staying with us. We're having a great time today. I hope you are. Now, Tom McKenna, you had a thought you were holding before. Would you hold it?
Well, what I said, people, that submarine is traveling through again.
Yeah. It's going north.
What I can't understand is people that are so adamant against handguns that surround themselves with people armed with handguns. I mean, to me, two that come to mind is our mayor and our president. They spend the majority of their waking hours surrounded by people carrying handguns. Now, if handguns are so bad, and they really have the conviction that they have, they should say, I am so adamant about handgun possession that I am ordering today all of my bodyguards to get rid of their handguns. But you don't hear that. And I wouldn't want to carry a handgun either if I could be surrounded by people with handguns. I mean, isn't that the classic definition of a hypocrite?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like handguns, and I'm standing next to someone all day long that has a handgun.
Who's armed to protect me?
I mean, that'd be like making an anti-drug speech, and the guy standing next to me is smoking a joint.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's the Rosie O'Donnell, and I, nothing
she's the
against
same
her.
way. Yeah.
Richie Daly, our guy now. What's his name?
Richie Daly, did he have a bodyguard like when he was going to De La Salle or something? I don't know.
I think he had a drive.
Probably.
He was
so his whole life he's had security.
Yeah, it's easy for him to say, isn't it?
He was teased quite heavily though when he went to school.
He was what?
Teased.
Well,
teased?
Yeah.
He should be.
Yeah.
Because of his father or other issues?
Mostly his father.
Oh,
well, it was bound to happen anyway. I mean,
also when he went to DePaul. He graduated from DePaul.
When he was on the debate team too.
Whatever.
Interesting.
That was cruel, wasn't it? He was on the debate team, I said.
Yeah. I was going to follow that up with saying, what's he going to do?
That was John Ryan, 5159 South Natoma Avenue.
Yeah.
CPD retired. Didn't do a damn thing for me there, you guys. Too late now.
They were saying, what's the mayor going to do? Is he going to die in office, or is he going to, eventually resign? And they said, somebody was on the radio and said, he's gonna teach diction over at Northwestern.
No, he's going to teach.
Northwestern University.
Ethics.
He's
going to teach business.
Ooh, business
ethics.
Ron Smolin?
We used to play at a lot of the Mayor Daley picnics in the park.
Oh,
he got to recognize me. He'd come up on stage and he'd shake my hand and says, Where are we this time?
Yeah.
Which park?
he didn't
Which
know?
park are we at?
Yeah.
Really? Which Mayor Daley was that?
Both of them.
Richard the first?
The last one.
Oh.
Second?
Richard M.
Yeah.
Richard M.
I know you guys used to play in Lincoln Park quite a bit. And
He would, what park are we? Really?
Well, they used to go through Chicago, numerous parks, and they'd have
Yeah.
his
Oh, yeah.
picnics in the
Well,
park.
Did you
Hey,
tell-
at least he didn't. At least he didn't ask what city he was in.
I'll tell you a funny story, though. I met Richie one time. I was at one of his town hall meetings. I had to go to the washroom. So I'm standing there, and guess who pulls up next to me?
Interesting.
Who?
Richie.
Any words exchanged?
yeah.
No, I just said hello.
What were you in the bushes? You mean or something?
I forgot where.
Oh, were you in the lavatory actually?
Yeah.
Was this water cold? Huh?
Deep too.
I think he had a little prostate problem because he was going quite frequently.
Wow.
A lot of prostrate around him. Too. Everybody's going prostrate. You know.
But no sense of any body.
prostrate.
Yeah, no sense of any bodyguards with him. He's in there.
He was by himself, yeah.
Interesting.
He didn't really have that many bodyguards.
He always went out with one.
He doesn't have much of a body either.
No, he didn't.
I seen him in the hall at City Hall one time too. He was talking to Peter Silvestri, and it was Christmas time. I said, "Hi, Pete." I didn't say anything to the mayor.
You know, that's not that someone like him doesn't have problems. I mean, it's difficult growing up in the shadow of father.
Yeah,
and such.
oh,
Yeah,
sure.
no,
It's a
no doubt
tough.
about
Yes,
it.
Ron?
Yeah.
Numerous times, though, when we take a picture, you put your arm around the guy to take the picture, right? But Richie never had it on, but I know when I took a picture at Washington twice, you can feel he had the body armor on.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Jo- George or Harold?
Harold.
Washington.
Harold.
Harold. Okay.
Yeah, Harold was the guy I had most fun with was Sawyer. I met him a couple times in a assembly hall. I cracked a couple of jokes with him. He worked for the water department. He was a chemist. He was also a collector.
A collector
A
of?
collector.
Well, there used to be a lot of civil service, quote unquote, or hirees, political hirees, and they used to have to kick back so much money.
That's what Huey Long called the deduct box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing I found too when I was working for the city was a poll sheet for the city workers to fill out on election day. So they were out watching the polls, and the funny story goes with that was the day I started was payday. It was also election day. So there was nobody around to pass out the paychecks. So they had to wait till the following day.
Everybody was. Yeah.
Now, Al, let me ask you this: why would they have to watch the polls? What about the Slovaks?
Well, once again, that's Jack Ryan.
And
I
the Lithuanians.
refuse to acknowledge that one at all.
John marked that spot so we can have the delete section on
Yeah.
there.
Well, talking about Eugene Sawyer was a great politician because you could never understand anything that he said.
They
And
called
they-
him Mr. Mumbles.
Yeah,
yeah,
Mumbles
they
is a
call him
pretty good
Mumbles,
speaker.
Mumbles,
Yeah.
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 I think he was.
Yes, he was a very good guy.
It's hard to judge
He
someone.
was a good guy.
It's hard to
Yeah.
judge someone. I judged him by I saw the guys who were on his detail volunteering, the policemen I knew, and they were pretty much a good bunch of guys overall. I
Yeah.
would think maybe they had something to do with him. And
Yeah.
he would have been okay as a mayor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think
he was double crossed by the unions because they decided that they wanted Little Richie in there instead. And
Little
after a while
Richard, the singer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's a little
after a
Richard.
while, they were kicked themselves in the butt because of the fact that Sawyer was a much better choice, and because he was a little more honest, I guess is a good way to put it, or whatever it was.
He was only in there about a year or so, wasn't he?
Something like that.
Yeah.
He was a great guy though.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then the other guy that was sort of.
We do great.
I think Washington was pretty good in general, although he was a little strange once in a while.
He had
He left a very good image.
He had a great personality. I
That
don't
was
did
my
you ever?
impression,
Yeah.
But the funny,
He loved people. He loved.
yeah, he
That
liked-
was his problem, really. He ate too much and
Yeah.
drank.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say drank too much, but you should. Yeah.
But the other funny story goes with it is the monk parakeets that are all over the south side are called Washington's birds because of the fact that they nested in a tree outside of his apartment,
Yeah.
and they had a guard there, so they couldn't steal the babies so they had a tendency to be multiplied, and they were one of these gigantic nest builders.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
They were real colony type of things. And you go to Jackson Park now, they have a problem once in a while with the utility poles because they build these nests so big that they short out.
You
Now
know,
that's-
talking about birds, it just popped into my head. Two things, and I've heard this a long time ago, and I've never seen either one of them. Two things you will never see in the city of Chicago: a baby pigeon or a bald wino. I mean, really, think about it.
Now that's
I've never
species.
seen a baby or a bald wino. Every wino you see, they've got hair like Stalin.
How about a baby wino?
Yeah, right.
The
That's three things then.
so
Yeah.
that species of parrot is from somewhere like near the Andes, so they can take cold climates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're green.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
right,
great.
yeah. little
And they
green.
fly over our house a lot this time of year for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
My family thought I was, making this up. I said, "You hear them? They
Oh, yeah.
but you can't do anything to them because they'll squeal on you.
Yeah.
Really?
They
Yeah.
turn on
Well,
you.
the funny story goes with it. One time, apparently, they had parakeets in this
Yeah.
area of the world at one time, and they so for some reason or other, they all what do you call it, died off, and so consequently, these parakeets would really replace a former parakeet that
Displace.
was here.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yes and no, but they don't. I don't know what damage they do besides utility poles because they eat. I see them eat seeds and stuff like that. For
Well,
the most part.
parakeets. That's the Italian word for twins.
Oh, jeez.
Listen now.
That's
Are we done with boxing now? Anybody got any more boxing comments or?
We
No.
were talking about
Wrestling?
the other one. Wrestling was if anybody remembers, Gorgeous George.
No, we're going to wrestling next now. I want to hold that thought.
Okay.
Up to wrestling.
Gorgeous.
Before we get into wrestling, everyone, I want to say a few words about it, having been in that marginally myself, as Tom was trained, and I actually did have some matches, some good ones, and Tom saw some of the worst ones. But the better ones were in smaller towns when you were working with someone in your own level. And
Oh, baby son.
the weird thing is, even in those towns, you got bimbos hanging around. They think you're wonderful because you're a wrestler, and I never took advantage of none of that myself.
Yeah,
Some were even women. But anyway, I remember looking in the World Book. That was what it was called, kids, your younger listeners, an encyclopedia, which was a book in chapters, alphabetically lined up with all these different subjects. Encyclopedia means everything. And how do you spell it? ENCYCLOPEDIA. We know from Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it said professional wrestling, and then it went something like this. It said sort of a quasi-athletic endeavor in which all of the maneuvers are carefully worked out before the match and so on and so on. Well, that's not true. They don't do that. And there was a famous case in California. Wasn't it California, Tom? Was it Ray Stevens and who was
Red
it?
Bastien.
Red Bastien. Some guy sued the promoter because one of the wrestlers wound up on his lap at the ringside.
Oh.
And the guy says, "Well, I've gone to every match for the last 20 years I sat in that seat. Now this is all fixed, and they all know everything." Well, the judge says to Bastien, he says to Stevens, "Well, when did you get into L.A. or whatever it was?" He said, "Well, the day before that." And he says, "And about you?" And he said, "Well, I was kind of late. I got in about 6:30, and had to go right to the stadium, and the match was at like 8 o'clock. It was due on, and the judge ruled that you could not go through these steps and
Yeah.
carefully
Yeah.
craft it. And they got good publicity out of the wrestling did, out of
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing I want to say was a little quote, and I wish I had the exact wording. It went like this about so he said it was very angry about the state of affairs with what is passing as wrestling matches these days, and that was by Nat Fleischer, publisher, editor of Ring Magazine in 1938. So
Wow.
now,
Yeah.
one more, and we'll turn it over to our experts.
Yeah.
Well,
more.
wrestling really again started back in the Grecian Olympics.
Well, before that,
Yeah, well, the official.
it's
I
probably
don't
the
know if they
oldest
had rules or
combat.
something like that.
Yeah.
But they started,
Anyway,
was,
where was I? What was the last
Where
one?
were you?
Oh, yeah, okay. Now, about the business about rigged and phony, and I was going to say the one thing. If anyone has ever been to matches, and I think maybe you have, or seen them on television,
Yeah,
from
certainly.
Marigold or from Rainbow or wherever. If they do the opening with the ring announcer, he'll say something like, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Allstate Arena, or wherever it is. Night of wrestling promoted by Joe Red Truck or whoever." And the next thing he'll say is, "These wrestling exhibitions are sanctioned by the State Athletic Commission," or they'll say the Department of Professional Regulation or something like that now. But anyway, the key word is these wrestling exhibitions. That's the end of it. That's the disclaimer. Okay, let's go.
Well, they're exhibitions.
Okay.
All
Go.
sports.
Where
All
do you wanna
sports
start?
are exhibitions.
All right.
Yeah.
Anytime a sport, you pay to see a sport, it's entertainment. Anytime, I don't care if it's football, basketball, whatever, it's entertainment.
Bears, Tom?
However,
Yeah, even when they lose.
professional wrestlers back in the day, I'm not talking about now, they were some pretty highly trained athletes. A lot of them come from amateur wrestling. A lot of them come from boxing. Some of them come from football. Some of them were weightlifters. They were very, very athletic guys, and some of them, they were shooters and hookers that really knew how to hurt you.
Okay, what do you mean by a shooter?
A shooter was a guy that had a very good college level wrestling ability. A guy like Vern Gagne, let's say, or Pat O'Connor, who was English. He was from Auckland, New Zealand.
New Zealander.
A guy like Lou Thez, now, he was a hooker. A hooker is what, as a matter of fact, the last great catch wrestler or hooker the United States had competing was a guy from Manchester, England, named Billy Robinson. And as a matter of fact, when he retired from wrestling, he taught a lot of these MMA guys these submission holds. So, it's very easy to break a guy's arm and his shoulder with like something like a double wrist lock. Or a sleeper hold is a legitimate hold. In martial arts, they call it a rear naked choke. But there were some of the top athletes that could perform at the highest level, and there was always showmanship. I mean, you always had a Buddy Rogers, you always had a Nick Bockwinkel, you always had, but these guys, they could also wrestle. I'd like to turn it over to the fellow on my left.
Ron, you're up. You poor guy, you've been sitting here waiting so long. You can have the rest of the
You
show.
didn't even
I'm going
introduce
home.
yourself, too.
Go ahead.
I did earlier.
What do you got to say? Now, you had experience as a...
Well, I've just been a fan for
That's what I mean.
the last
Mm,
20,
how
30
long-
years.
How do you remember the earliest days? Or
I go back to about 1969 when
so-
we had the Chain Gang, which you recall.
yeah.
Don Fargo, who came back under numerous aliases.
Oh, my God.
Dalton, Fargo.
He was a Dalton. He was French Foreign Legion.
Legionnaires.
Yes, Legionnaires. He was everything. People say it's fake. Don't say fake. Perhaps it's fixed, but don't say fake because I've seen these guys get hurt.
What about any other names you remember from that era? Or?
Well, I've seen a lot. I've watched the old wrestling too, but we mentioned earlier Moose Cholak, Bruiser, Crusher,
Gorgeous George.
George. I've seen a little bit of George. I never saw him. I was after
My
George.
dad used to watch it. He always come in with a permanent blonde hair, and the first thing was to mess up his hair.
But George could wrestle.
Yeah.
But you had Rude, yeah.
Well, whatever it was, the showmanship. It was the fact is that he came in, like a Liberace type of style, and the first thing was to mess him up.
Well, I'll go you one better. I think Gorgeous George's idea was taken up by a lot of these other show business people.
It could be.
Clothing.
There was a few others that came in with all kinds of capes and all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead now. Where were you now?
Earlier on, you said somebody was training with cigars and beer.
Tony Galento,
Tony
the
Galento.
boxer.
Galento. Now, what caught my attention to wrestling, I grew up here in Chicago. I used to see wrestling in Chicago. This is probably about 1969, 1970. I'm up in Milwaukee visiting some relatives. Saturday night, wrestling is on. And it's the AWA show from Minnesota, which is Vern Gagne's territory. And I recognized it right away. Same ring, same format, the whole thing. And here comes the Crusher. And he's training for a match in Milwaukee. I'm going to be running up and down Wisconsin Avenue carrying a keg of beer on one shoulder and smoking a cigar.
Yeah, yeah.
The next week, you watch the tape in Chicago. I've got a keg of beer on one shoulder and I got a cigar. I'm going to train running up and down Halsted Street. He said the same thing in for when he was in Hammond. He's running up and down Indianapolis Boulevard. I'm sure there were people going up and down Indianapolis Boulevard. Yeah, looking for him. Sure.
Yeah.
You know, he mentioned the chain gang, Don Fargo. And an interesting sidebar about Don Fargo, there were wrestlers back in the days that would blade. They'd cut themselves in order to produce blood. Don Fargo never bladed himself. He wanted to take a hard-away shot to the eye. He'd take the punch to the eyelid and bleed. They'd pay him a little extra. But I'm talking about in some situations. In some situations, those guys really did fight.
Yeah,
I mean,
the ones that were always brutal were the ones that come out with their folding chairs and hit each other.
well, that's not wrestling. That's
That's
brawling.
fighting, I know, but
Yeah.
still, they promoted it as a wrestling match. But you're right, it's a fighting match. It's not wrestling.
Well, you know, you look back in the days, you know, one of the most famous guys that ever wrestled in Chicago was Jimmy Landos, the Golden Greek. It was back in the 30s, and then
20s.
Bronco Nagurski from the Chicago Bears was a world heavyweight wrestling champion. And we've had guys like Ruffy Silverstein, who was an NCAA champ for the University of Illinois. He was a wrestler.
He was also a physical ed teacher in the Chicago board ed system.
Say that again.
Then
Well, board ed.
we had Bobby Manigoff. We had Big Moose Cholak. Now there's one guy. When he was in the Navy, he was the only guy in the Navy's history who held the heavyweight boxing title and heavyweight wrestling title at the same time. I mean, he played football for the University of Wisconsin, and he was recognized.
CBS, I think.
Yeah, he ended up. I met him. I was working for the city of Chicago. He was working for the civil that's public works, which is an oxymoron, but that's beside the point.
Who you calling a moron?
Yeah.
And he was in bad shape. He would hardly move at all. You know, he was lucky
Yeah,
he
but
got
he was
to
older
work.
then, too.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he was, but
He died at age 72.
Yeah, he was huge, and but he seemed in general a pretty nice guy. Other than that,
Oh, there was another guy from Cicero. His father was the chief of police of Cicero, and he played pro football, I believe, with the Chicago Cardinals. He was a former NCAA champ, and he wrestled pro. His name was Bob Konofsky. And, you know, we had a lot of them from this area. Bobby Manigoff.
Chicago's a big area. You know, that, you
Well-
would have a central. You know, usually it was centralized. And
I'll be honest with you, you know, before the Bob Luce era in Chicago wrestling and the AWA, before that era, when Fred Kohler was the promoter, WGN telecast wrestling from coast to coast like cable in them days. And the matches were from the amphitheater
And the Marigold.
and the Marigold Arena with Jack Brookhouse as a commentator. And
you should tell the kids what the amphitheater was.
well, the International Amphitheater,
Yeah.
that was on 43rd and Halsted. It had right by the stockyards. And they had rodeos there. They had stock shows there,
Car shows.
basketball,
football.
hockey,
Political
Yeah.
conventions.
political conventions.
conventions.
That was
Yeah.
designed to be an exposition
It
spot
was,
for
yeah.
Late
horses
Tech
and
had
horses
graduating
horses and cattle. And they had the International Livestock Exposition, where these different farmers from different parts of the country would bring in their prize steers and compete for
Yeah.
And
the
he also had a steakhouse next door.
Yeah,
to
the
it.
Stockyard Inn.
yeah.
Stockyard Inn.
Yeah.
That was-
Stockyard Inn. That's right.
I
It
was there once. I was lucky my girlfriend's father paid for it at the time because I couldn't afford it.
it was not cheap. I know.
Yeah, that was arguably the best place in the world to get a steak.
Yeah.
Because the drovers that brought their cattle in there, they would stay there, and then they would want to eat, and they would not settle for anything that wasn't the top of the line.
I, for one, think that all meat should come as God intended in cellophane packages like that in the store. Won't you?
We don't need
You've been
posters.
drinking too much again.
Well,
Anyway,
well, going back to the International Amphitheater, it also hosted one heavyweight World's Championship boxing match.
Ooh,
It was 1965.
that recent.
Cassius Clay had just defeated Sonny Liston for the world title in '64, and he gave Sonny Liston a rematch. Well, the WBC did not think Sonny Liston warranted a rematch since he quit in 7 rounds in the corner in Miami Beach. So the WBC staged a contest in Chicago between Chicago's Ernie Terrell and Eddie Machem, and Ernie Terrell won the heavyweight championship of
now,
Chicago.
Tom, what's WBC just for?
World Boxing Council.
Okay.
Council.
You know, Ernie Terrell was a local guy. He's supposed to be a pretty good guy too, a promoter.
He won the Chicago Golden Gloves as a light heavyweight.
His sister sang with the Supremes. Jean Terrell. Yeah.
He was such an honest guy, you'd buy a used car from him.
No, that is something. That really is something. But okay, now Ron, do you remember the Marigold or the Rainbow Arena or Marigold? Or?
Well, I learned about the Marigold in later years after it was already closed, so I did research on it.
I was never in the place myself.
Yeah, it's still there now. It's a church right now.
What is it? An arcade or something? Or
Well, no, it's a big. It was a big arena.
what is it now?
It's a church now.
Yeah.
Oh, church. Okay.
Yes.
At one time,
Yeah.
the Coliseum was a big draw too. There was exhibition
Yes.
hall, and that had a history that was quite interesting because they brought up the prisoner of war camp
Right.
from I forgot where
Libby
it was.
Prison.
Libby Prison.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they built it there, and it was right by the
18th and
L-track, so
Wabash
you
or
could
something.
see
South
it there.
Wabash, right?
Yeah,
We were there.
You could see it. I was never there, but
I
it's
was
just
there
fell
in
into ruin. That's all.
Now,
Well,
Why?
years after the Coliseum was actually torn down, they had different framework propping up the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
had
guess it was eventually sold or something or moved. You know, remember that? You go by
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the front part was from the Libby Prison.
And they had a sign there that says, "Please don't pick the bricks" or something like that.
Who wants them? I got my Comiskey brick.
Yeah.
That was a freebie.
Now, while
But I
re-
bought a chair.
wrestling was at the amphitheater in Marigold, the Coliseum was the home of roller derby.
Well, they had
original-
wrestling
Oh, I
too.
forgot.
Yeah.
Jerry Sulcer's promotion, the original roller derby.
Chicago Stadium also had wrestling. Eddie Quinn was the promoter. But I'd like to throw a little plug in here. For anybody that's interested in watching wrestling from the 50s from the International Amphitheater, go to YouTube and look up Chicago Archives. They show all of 1950 wrestling matches on YouTube.
Or type in classic wrestling, you'll find it that way too.
Yeah,
lot of
you
them.
were talking about selling bricks, though. Don't forget the wall where they had these St. Valentine's Massacre, as they call it. That was sold to a Canadian.
Yeah.
To where?
A Canadian bought it.
What day did that happen?
And was anything ever done with that? I forget.
It was I think it was on 14th of
Middle of February. It would be the Ides of February, wouldn't it? Since 28 days.
Tom and Ron, I wanted to ask you now. A wrestler of some note who died recently because he did a little acting, Roddy Piper.
Oh, yeah.
Does he stand well in your mind as a fairly good guy? Good wrestler, talented.
He started in the business when he was about 16 years old. He was a Golden Glove fighter. He was a transient youth. He ran away from home.
Huh.
He started wrestling at a very young age. He climbed into the ring weighing 185 pounds against someone this fellow knows, Larry the Axe Henning,
Larry Henning.
who was 6'3" and 310 pounds.
300 bucks.
And that match lasted all of 10 seconds. That was his introduction to the world of professional wrestling. He did very well for himself. He really did.
What say you?
Where was the Marigold located, Ron?
It's just west of Halsted Street on Grace.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Grace.
Yeah.
Yes.
810 maybe, something like
Was
that.
one of them on Clark Street? Maybe I miss.
Clark
Rainbow?
Street was a rainbow.
Rainbow.
Clark Rainbow.
Yeah, that was attached to the Rainbow ice skating rink. In later years, back in the 70s, 60s, the what was it? The Kinetic Playground was in there and other things. I never even knew it existed till they were knocking it down. And
Too late, huh?
well, when I saw them knocking it down, you could still see the
Was it a ballroom or something?
yeah, all the walls and the ornate fixtures were still on the walls when they were knocking it down.
Rainbo.
Rainbow.
Rainbow. Not to be confused with Rainbow Beach. Beach.
Beach, no.
Freudian
Ice
slip.
cream.
Rainbow Beach.
Yeah.
But that whole
On that happy note, are we there?
yes.
You've been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians, and we thank you for it. We'll be right back.
We'll go back to wrestling.
Do you need a carpet for your living room, dining room, bedroom, den, family room, or even outdoor carpeting for your patio? Well, the place to go for a great deal is Carpet Warehouse, which is located at 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago, or you can call Carpet Warehouse at area code 773-283-0100. So remember, friends, for a great deal on any carpeting you might need, your living room, dining room, bedroom, den or family room, and even outdoor carpeting in your patio, go or call Carpet Warehouse at 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago, or call area code 773-283-0100. Now, they are just east of Cicero Avenue or the Kennedy Expressway on the north side of Montrose Avenue. Carpet Warehouse, located at 4300 West Montrose Avenue, or call 773-283-0100. For a great deal on any carpeting you may need, Carpet Warehouse, 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago, or call 773-283-0100.
Now back to our discussion. Jack?
Jack. Oh, Jack, where are you? Oh, Jack. Oh, Jack. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and we're having a great time. We're going to double the running time today, so don't go away from your radios.
Yes, folks, stay tuned because we're going out in the backyard.
Just kidding.
and Jack's going to be body slammed through a table.
One thing about the pro wrestling game, or you want to call it racket, whatever you want. One about the game is you mention it to somebody, and if they're not a big fan of that, they always get a little smile. They remember some very pleasant memories of it. And I remember I never saw any live matches till I was going to start to train. Well, you know, but we knew it from we knew it from Saturday evening. Like 1961 was a big year. Rogers and O'Connor. That was one of the biggest promoted matches there was, and I think at the time they were trying to actually get a real one recognized champion nationwide. But once again, it was kind of broke apart because individual regions wanted to keep.
Who wrestled in that match? Rogers and who?
Pat O'Connor.
O'Connor.
Yeah, I remember every bus had the sign Rogers versus O'Connor, June 30th, 61, Comiskey Park.
And what you're talking about right there was pretty much started the AWA with Vern Gagne, because he was part of the NWA.
Yeah.
Wanted to be champion, never was.
His promotion
was
actually started in the 20s by Joe Stecker, the champion from around the area, and his brother Tony. Eventually, they bought their business at one time. So.
Well, actually, the name AWA has been around for quite a while. Mm-hmm. I mean, Vern Gagne was not the first promoter to use that. A guy named in Ohio named Al Haft had AWA Championship Wrestling with a very good champion he had at the time, too, Carl Gotch. But what I'd like to talk about is the athleticism of some of these wrestlers. Some of these guys are really great. You look at a guy named Bronco Nagurski from the Chicago Bears. He's in three Hall of Fames. He's in the Professional Football Hall of Fame, he's in the Collegiate Football Hall of Fame, and he's in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And there's two other guys I'd like to mention. One of them is named Paul Berlenbach. He was a AAU amateur wrestler who wrestled in the Olympics and went into boxing and become the light heavyweight professional boxing champion of the world, Paul Berlenbach. And there was one other guy named Danny Hodge from the University of Oklahoma. He was a three-time NCAA wrestling champion, a three-time national wrestling champion. He wrestled in 2 Olympics. When he got through with wrestling, he won the National Golden Gloves Boxing Championship. And he fought 17 times undefeated as an amateur, and he had 8 pro fights, and he lost 1. Oh, he lost 2. And he was, when in the pro wrestling, he was the junior heavyweight champion of the world. And the thing about this guy, his hands were so strong, he could take a pair of pliers and crush them.
Yeah.
He could take an apple and crush it into apple juice.
Yeah, I met a woman one time. She wasn't quite that strong, but she was in the fire department, the EMC. Yeah. Anyways, she had strong hands too. She could literally crush your hand.
Wow.
And but she died of cancer, so that was a sad story about her. But the other guy I talked about earlier was shoe cobbler. He could make all these guys come in. They thought they were great, and they would be on the floor begging them to let go.
Tom, isn't it fair to conclude that as rehearsed and choreographed as wrestling might be, you've got to be in good condition. You've got to be a good athlete to make it through a bout.
Well, I'll put it to you like this.
Yeah.
It's really not choreographed, but the finishes are planned.
Okay.
It's planned who's going to win and lose, but
Yeah.
they're really not choreographed. Oh, and they got to be
Not that
great.
precisely. Okay.
You know, like there's 2 types of matches, like I stated. There's a shoot and a work. Mostly we see works. But even to do a good work, you have to be a great athlete to take them bumps, to counter them holes. Yeah, you got to be in great shape. So,
Counter everything too. You know.
counter, yeah, John.
If you're not in some kind of shape, we had a kid in summer of '71. He went to train at the gym that Bob Saber was running, and hey, listen to this one, John. He was on the weekends. They were promoting cities like we were at not Waukegan. What's the one up in?
Lake?
No, in Wisconsin.
Kenosha?
Kenosha, yeah, Kenosha, Twin Lakes, and over in Elkhorn, there was a place. Anyway, this one guy coming, he looked big, strong guy. He was in the match, and he checked himself in the hospital, all the aches and pains he had afterward. So,
Well, these guys have to be. You take a look, if they get thrown out of the ring and they land on the floor, they have to be agile enough that they don't,
Break
Crack
the
up.
bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can honestly go ahead.
I've seen guys hit the concrete. You could actually hear the flesh hit the concrete.
Wow.
And you take a guy like Larry the Axe Henning or Moose Cholak, when they throw a forearm smash, you'd hear it 30 rows back. They'd connect. I mean, an average guy in the street, it's not even a punch. It'd be a forearm smash. You'd practically cave the guy's chest in.
Yeah.
Like that, well, he mentioned Johnny Valentine was another one.
Mm-hmm. Someone said that Moose is one guy who threw it much harder than it looked. So I never had the pleasure.
Another aspect of wrestling, maybe you guys just consider it a footnote, but I think it was getting some popularity for a while, women's wrestling. Maybe it just led to people coming to the cards.
I
that
like
sort
to
of
wrestle
thing.
women personally, but I don't like wrestling women.
The name that stands out in my mind, I forget her promoter, I think she married the guy, Mildred Burke.
Yeah.
I believe her promoter was Sam Menaker?
Don't know.
Something Wolf.
Oh, there was a wolf.
Billy Wolf or something like that?
Yes, Billy Wolf. Women's wrestling to me,
Well, the other one that was
novelty.
A novelty was midget wrestling.
Midget wrestling
Yeah,
also was a
yeah,
novelty.
Yeah.
I try to get into that.
They usually have those just to
wide.
attract the attendance. They
Well,
use
it was,
the ladies
it was
or the
humorous,
midgets.
that was enjoyable. It was entertainment, like
Variety.
A good comedy act.
Bob Luce's wife was.
Yeah, Sharon Lass.
Sharon.
Bob Luce's wife was a wrestler.
Well,
yeah.
the other one that's coming up too a little bit is women's boxing, which I don't know how well that goes.
Well,
We hear more of the mixed martial arts now, like
Yeah, a little bit.
yeah, there's
Ronda
a,
Rousey is the name.
Ronda Rousey. Well, the mixed martial arts in the UFC is very popular, but you know what? They can't really get a fan base because those guys don't last very long. Like boxers and wrestlers, they'd build a fan base because you'd be following these guys for years. These guys in these mixed martial arts, it's so brutal, they don't last long.
Yeah,
Do you think one plus of women's wrestling, it did bring quite a few more attendees to some of the bouts? You think that was a major
'cause
factor, I'm sure.
Oh, it was entertainment.
Yeah.
There's the entertainment value,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
You look at pro wrestling now and the way women are portrayed in it, you look at the way pro wrestling's portrayed now, it's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well, they're trying-
I call it
The Jerry Springer Show. That's what pro wrestling is now.
That's it.
They are turning.
People think I watch it a lot, and I don't watch it ever. I just have to flip on one night, and they had something that was like a spoof of Dancing with the Stars they were doing instead of a match.
Well, right now they are trying to turn it around a little bit to make the ladies more, what would you call it, real as far as wrestling. They are more trained as wrestlers. Because matter of fact, one that just came out now is Ric Flair's daughter.
Oh, wow.
She is.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, matter of fact, she just won a championship last night for the Divas Championship, they call it. But she can wrestle. She is good.
Well, with a father like Ric Flair, I'm
Yes.
sure she could wrestle. But, there's one thing about the WWE that really bothers me. They have this great athlete, Brock Lesnar, former NCAA champ, Ultimate Fighting champ, and they have no one to compete with him.
There must be somebody out there that could. No?
Well, they just announced he's going to be the next main event at WrestleMania against The Undertaker.
What's his name of the amateur? Who's the guy who beat the Russian and...
Roland Gardner.
Yeah, did he have any with the pro wrestling? I know he was in the mixed martial arts or something.
Yes, he was. And we had Kurt Angle, a guy who's actually an Olympic gold medalist for the United States, and they never done nothing great with him. They put the belt on him, but the championship does not have the credibility like it did years ago. Nobody cares no more. I wouldn't even know who the champ is right now.
Well, you
Well,
you mentioned the Undertaker. How long has he been around?
A long time.
And he's young yet. I think he's just like 50, 51, right around there. But if you take a look at him, you think he's about 20 years older.
But you look at amateur wrestling, most of them are Grecian-style wrestling, which has nothing to do with the modern
it
pro
doesn't.
wrestling.
Well, it's a good. You have Greco-Roman in the amateurs. You have freestyle and
Right.
you have folk style. Folk style is what's done mostly in high school and college. Freestyle Greco-Roman, that's done mostly in park districts and in international competition.
Right.
A lot of good pros did come from that background, though, but not currently.
No.
Not currently.
Well, you got different set of rules altogether for those wrestling matches because
No submission holds, no
Yeah.
throws.
you have a circle and you throw them out of the circle, basically what it amounts to.
You just try to get the guy down and pin him, which is next to impossible because you got to hold him down for a count of one. That's what kind of made pro wrestling appealing. Was you had to have a count of three.
Right.
It was known as catch can wrestling.
We talked about the amphitheater before. How that was. It was an environment that was made for wrestling. You got in there. It was smoky. It wasn't
Dingy.
dingy. And if you go to a wrestling match nowadays, you walk in and you think you're at a grocery store. It's that clean.
But
The arenas.
It was
and
sad to see
it's
the
like a cartoon.
amphitheater being torn out. It was really sad.
Oh, yeah.
situation.
Well, it ended up bad, too.
And yet, even as with the reputation the amphitheater had, I know most of you guys are from the south side, so you know how that neighborhood is. When you grew up on the north side,
That's right, my father's neighborhood.
yeah, when you grew up on the north side, everybody says, "Oh, you don't want to go to that neighborhood; it's a bad neighborhood."
Canaveral.
It
At
was
one
never
time,
really.
Ringling Brothers was going to buy that to be their Midwest headquarters because they liked the fact you could bring train cars right in there and all. They
Who was that?
Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey,
Oh,
Yet, even though people are saying
That's what
it,
they say one of the strangest things in the city of Chicago is a street named Normal running through Canaryville.
What were we saying?
That's
Ron?
right.
but people are talking about, like I say, about the neighborhood and everything. If it was so bad, you tell me why from like 1972 to about 1978. They ran wrestling there practically like twice a month with Bob Luce
Yeah.
and Bruiser and Gagne.
But there was no other real show in town. You had some. I
But
remember we went to some.
They
at,
had capacity crowds in them
they
days.
sold out
Oh, yeah.
twice a month there.
Now, remember, we went to the Coliseum. We saw wrestling from Mexico. Well, a lot of them from Mexico. Some were Latins who were from here, too, but nonetheless. A guy named Lunas promoted there. There was some promotion, and Billy Gills promoted in about a year and a half or two in the Aragon, going back to the early 70s.
And somebody else
No,
was
others.
promoting the Uptown for a while,
Oh
too.
yeah, Flores. He promoted boxing and wrestling at the Uptown Theater.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, one of the guys I used to work out with in the ring, named Raul Guzman, was featured on that card. I don't know if you remember Raul Guzman.
Rocky Guzman.
Yeah, he wrestled. He
Yeah.
wrestled AWA
Yeah.
TV.
We saw
Yeah,
him
he was
uh,
at the
in
Uptown. A
Coliseum.
couple of the
The-
televised things.
The
from
other one
Uptown.
that they had a couple wrestling matches at was the Portage Theater. They promoted a couple. I guess they were amateurs. I don't know. But
What
they-
theater?
Portage Theater?
Portage.
Oh, Portage.
I don't remember seeing anything there.
Yeah, it was. I didn't see much publicity on it, but I went to a function there and they were showing. They had the.
Where was this?
Oh wait, yes, Dennis did have something over there one time that they had wrestling matches in there, but I'm not sure whose promotion it was.
Yeah, I don't.
I
It
never-
was.
I never saw that.
It was. It wasn't. It wasn't unknowns. You
Yeah,
know,
there's-
I think there were Mexicans or something like that.
There's numerous small promotions right here in the area. Matter of fact, our friend of mine, George Natoli, who owns Natoli Delicatessen around 7700 on Belmont. There's your commercial, George.
Yeah.
He'll be billed for that.
He's a retired professional wrestler. He was with Windy City Promotions.
What's his name?
Sam DeSera.
Sam
That's who it is?
Sarah.
Oh,
His
that,
name-
is that around anymore? Windy City?
Windy City, no, they folded.
Yeah.
But George was a wrestler with Windy City. His real name is George Natoli, but everybody would know him as Vito Two Fingers Fontaine.
Twice.
Yes.
Twice with the band boosters. We had wrestling as
Yes.
wrestling as a fundraiser. The first time, there was a guy named Bob Till who was promoting. He brought in, well, he was for Bruiser. We had Bruiser, Moose Cholak, I forget who else. That was in I'll tell you exactly when it was. October 14th, 1986 was my daughter Jennifer's 14th birthday, and that was that night over there. And then a few years later, I suggested it again, and a new crew was in with the boosters. Oh, that's a great idea. So the president goes out and contacts, he contacts Windy City.
DeSera.
Yeah. And at the meeting, he says, well, we can do this. We're here, bring in Ken Patera. And I never got to ask him who he'd bring in. It turned out it might have been Rashke at the time, at this time. And or we can have a battle royal. And the jerk president says, yeah, let's have a battle royal, which means we'll have 6 or 8 guys established, even in a lower level. Everybody else can go to his wrestling school and say, guys, you got a chance to make some real experience, but I can't pay you. And they'll go, yeah, I want to go. So that's what it turned out. It was terrible. But we made a few bucks at it, so.
Sam was a wrestler for a while. He worked for the city,
Mhm.
and he got hurt. He fell off a truck or something,
Yeah.
hurt his back. Yeah.
And where's this
He was-
place?
Windy City Wrestling was based in South Chicago.
No, where's his restaurant now?
Oh no, I'm talking something. Yeah, that was George Natoli
Oh.
that has the deli.
Sam DeSero, they may have collected some money because he had the WCW emblem before World
Yes.
Championship Wrestling or something like that.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it was Windy City Wrestling.
Yeah.
And then there was a lawsuit, so then
Probably
they
got
made
some
it
bucks on this
Windy
side.
City Professional Wrestling or something like that. They changed it to.
Before we get too close to the end, you mentioned before, everybody remembers Jack Brickhouse. That in his book, he says some people only remembered him for the wrestling, which was on WGM and the Dumont Network. Bruce Dumont shows up. That's his father, was the inventor of the Dumont Network. Anyway, there's an interesting story.
TV.
Dumont TV's there in the early.
There's an interesting story about, remember Hans Schmidt? Anybody? The name Hans
Name
Schmidt?
rings a bell.
The Terrible Tootin'? Well, anyway, he came on an interview with Jack Brickhouse in the early 50s, and anything you'd like to say to the young fans here? He goes, you win any way you can. The rules don't matter, or something like that. Well, they get all kinds of... Jack Brickhouse says, now, Hans, you can't be talking this way. All kinds of letters go in. They go into the FBI. They invite, who's this non-repentant Nazi or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened? It turned out that Hans Schmidt was really Guy LaRose or Guy LaRose, a French-Canadian.
I was just
They said
gonna
you
say,
look like a big German stormtrooper. That's why he made his...
Sold it for all it was worth.
Yeah. But that's interesting, too. With all the names they give somebody. Friedrich von Gruppenhofer, so-and-so von this one, Hans Schmidt.
Yeah.
That translates to Jack Smith, right? Something like that.
Right, yeah.
It's concise, very German, but neat. More of a blue-collar Nazi.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
And I remember for a while back in the 80s, I want to say, Saturday night, they were weekly featuring women wrestlers on a program called Glow.
Glow and
It was
Powell.
on for 2-3 years. Quite a while. It had a long run.
Gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Or is it all
They were all a bunch of screamers, I remember that.
good-looking women?
Well, I didn't say it weren't.
Well, they were good hair pullers to some degree, but they
yeah.
you always wonder how they kept their clothes on the way they were tearing at each other. But other than that,
That's
understand
why
they
were
couldn't.
watching, you know.
yeah.
This fellow's got something interesting to say.
I'm sorry.
Back in my high school days,
Long ago?
Yeah, 6th and 7th grade. I didn't even know he was a wrestler at the time. But I'm sure you can tell him who he is. Carl Engstrom was the gentleman's name.
I heard the name. Yeah.
And he wrestled all around the area. Very good wrestler.
Well, at one time, Chicago was the wrestling capital of the world, or not not the world, right here, pro wrestling, out of Chicago.
Chicago and St. Louis were the two greatest wrestling entities in the nation at the time. But I remember one time, like he was talking about the amphitheater with the sellouts, I remember one match they brought in Bruno Sammartino from the East Coast. The building was sold out, and there was 1,000 turned away at the door for that match. All the Italians from Taylor Street were there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at that particular time, Sammartino was a bit of a promoter himself, and so was the Sheik in Detroit,
Sheik, yeah.
who was also the behind the scenes. He had a front man, and he gave Bruno a bad payment, payout. Not payoff.
Payoff.
But he kind of shorted him or something, I felt. So Bruno says, I'll fix you. So he goes down to Indianapolis and hooks up with Dick the Bruiser, and they kind of did a thing. Then they started promoting the same night in Detroit as the Sheik would promote in the videos, and that's why I was down there and didn't work, but I was down in Indianapolis when he was. I met the guy. Hey, there's nice guys you want to meet. You know, regular guy. And
Yeah, most of them are.
who's formerly the world. No, not most of them. Some of them. I'd say you're right. Most of them. He was at one time the world's best bench presser. Bruno Sammartino was, and how old would he be now? In his 80s, huh?
I believe he's about 86 years old now. And he still works out with weights and still runs.
Wow.
He actually was born in Italy. Most of these phony biographies, you know. Who's got? Come on.
He was born in Pizzavierto, Italy during the
Abruzzi.
war. He was pushed to Abruzzi, and he settled in Pittsburgh.
Makes sense to
And
me.
prior to him doing the weight, he was really a 90-pound weakling. This guy.
True. Yeah.
He started weight training, and he competed in Olympic lifting and powerlifting and a little bit of bodybuilding.
Okay.
But he went to the University of Pittsburgh as a high school kid. He was so crazy about wrestling, his high school did not have a wrestling team. So his football coach arranged with him to train at the University of Pittsburgh. At the time, was one of the best wrestling colleges in the country. Rex Perry was the coach, a former Olympian. He offered Bruno a scholarship to wrestle, but Bruno was just an average student, and he was scared of the language barrier, so he never took that offer up. But here's another interesting thing. When he was working at the Y, he did a little boxing. And the guy was a retired Pittsburgh police officer named, I believe, Al Quayle. And he interested Bruno in boxing, and Bruno boxed a little bit, not very much, about 2 months training. But they took him out to Stillman's gym on the East Coast, and they put him in a ring with none less than Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston beat him badly for 5 rounds, but one thing that happened, he could not put Bruno down. Bruno was a tough guy. He held his version of the championship with a lot of dignity.
Tom, was there any spark or incident that parlayed one of the few bodybuilders of note, Arnold Schwarzenegger, into a successful movie and a political career? Was just the right agent, just the right... What do you think got Arnold to move from the bodybuilding world?
Predominantly, there was no money to be made in it at that time.
Right.
Now, for the Mr. Olympia contest, these bodybuilders nowadays are very ugly specimens. Back in the 60s and the 70s, they were a lot better developed than your average man, but they looked for real. These guys are freaks.
Too many chemicals, would you say?
Yeah.
Chemicals, absolutely.
Well, the other thing that I talked to a physical trainer, and she said that most of these bodybuilders have a real cardiovascular problem because of the fact they don't do anything except weightlifting. They don't go out running and stuff like this here to build up their cardio system.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Well,
not most of
she
them.
told me.
Well, she was wrong then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she said the guy came in. She She, you know, they give the strength on the arms. Got out straight like that, and she could hang from it. And you know, it's 100.
The girl's always hanging from my arms. So that's why
Yeah,
I
I know.
cane. Beat them away.
And Tom, would you say that steroids ultimately killed women's bodybuilding?
I think it killed male bodybuilding.
Okay,
I
but
think
certainly
I
women.
think it killed the NFL. I think it killed pro wrestling. I think it
Okay.
killed a lot of things. It's
What's
it's,
to be
it's
done
not
about
good.
it?
Yeah, no.
What's to be done about it? It is illegal. It is a controlled
It wasn't at
substance.
one time.
At
Now
one
it
time
is, yeah.
it wasn't.
Remember, didn't McMahon have a lot of problems with that, supplying to people, you know?
Oh,
He
you-
beat it, huh?
You mean the punk Vince McMahon?
That's what I like to call him, punk.
Well, I talked to a woman, just to say. She said she was a bodybuilder and she was taking steroids,
Oh, geez.
and she was lifting weights, and the weights were beyond the capacity of her muscles, and she pulled muscles, and she had all kinds of injuries because of that.
No, is this a boyfriend? I mean, you know, some of the women
No,
I
it's
think
a company I
just
work
pushed
with.
by a boyfriend. You know.
She
But
said I worked
what a
with-
great thing, steroids. They put muscles on women and breasts on guys. Does that make any sense to you?
They also
That's true.
have a little problem called infancy.
Well, I was impotent. I'm going to be impotent, you know.
Yeah, well, you know.
I know.
And
Can't
the
have-
women, the acne and the deep voice and hair loss. I mean, so much. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it does the body a lot of damage, and sometimes they can't.
Turns your
recover
grapes into
from it.
raisins.
Well, speaking of that, you know, there used to be a lot of bodybuilders in pro wrestling that were natural back in the days.
Right.
Now, when the WWE got into prominence, it was almost a requirement to be on steroids. Those guys couldn't wrestle. They didn't look that good. They were freaks. And the whole thing degenerated. It's just
The whole 80s. The whole 80s. It went from guys that were athletes to guys that looked like cartoon characters.
Didn't even Arnold admit to some limited use
Yeah.
of steroids? I mean, you know.
back in the day. Arnold would have been Mr. Olympia no matter what, but he used steroids, and there was a simple reason. A lot of the guys did, but they do not use them to the extent they're used now.
Yeah.
I mean, and some people could tolerate a little bit of steroids, some can't.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
One bodybuilder I think had a great physique, maybe the last of his era, Frank Zane. You know, slender, well defined, not the big, bulky behemoth.
I kind of like Boyer Cole, that type myself, too. Boyer Cole was a Mr. America also.
I kind of like the Chicago police officer, Sergio Oliva.
Okay.
Well, the other guy that was always with the 90-day thing was this bodybuilder. What was his name?
Charles
Always-
Atlas?
Charlie Atlas. Yeah.
No.
Oh, you're going backwards.
Yeah, he was a 90-pound weakling and all that stuff. You know.
He was
told-
born Abruzzi, Italy,
Italian.
Angelo Siciliano.
That sounds right.
And they're still selling his course on the internet. You can still buy it. So,
You still see his body there, and he's been dead for several years.
1972.
Good looking guy.
That's a few years, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a few years.
Anybody wants to see a great classic wrestling match, go to YouTube, Chicago Archives, and watch Vern Gagne versus Luthez.
How about that, Ron? Got any thoughts on
And
that?
I'll add something I said, okay, when I said the 80s, early 90s, how it turned into cartoon characters with the steroids.
Well-
They are going back. Now, if you look at the guys who are there, they are athletes again. But while you had the 90s with WWE, WWF, whichever you want to call them, the local boys around here, maybe some of them used it, but for the most part, they were all athletes.
Yeah.
And there's
Well, you
there's
can be
quite
an
a-
athlete and use it, but, you know.
and there's still quite a few promotions right around this particular area, the northwest side, that are still athletic. and
Well,
put
isn't
on
the early
shows.
death of stem steroid users just scaring off some of the young guys? I think there's some of that. There has to be some of that.
Well, yeah, basically, it's like he says, a dangerous drug. You know, they overuse it. They ruin their muscle system. They ruin their health and everything else, and it's.
And they don't look real. They look like something out of
Well,
There's
a factory.
there's some evidence that Hitler, they were known to him, and he gave it to his troops to make them stronger and more aggressive. It's been known. Perry Rader was the editor of Iron Man for years. He said he got a letter from some guy in the Philippines about steroids in 1948. He refused to publish. Say 10, 12, 15 years later, it became commonplace what the steroids were known. So,
Well, one of the things about steroids, a lot of them were used during the Second World War for people that were emaciated in concentration camps. They helped people
Well, that would be in a medical under supervision.
A medical supervision.
Nothing like they were taking.
No, it's
But what really happened, the Russians got a hold of it, and they start winning gold medals in Olympic weightlifting.
Remember the East German thing? All their women athletes were considered.
Some of
all
them
drugs.
more like men than women did.
And most men.
I'm the benchmark.
Before we close out our session today, and it's unusual, folks, any of you regular listeners noticed we didn't even go into any current events or local events. We had a subject I thought wasn't going to carry, and it just carried the whole show, aren't you? Let's for our guests today, okay? Ron Smolin.
Here, here.
Smolin Orchestra. Ron Smolin Orchestra. Got a website?
RonSmolinOrchestra.com.
What's that again?
RonSmolinOrchestra.com.
Tom Weiss-Villas.
Don't forget to leave the zip.
Anonymous.
Are you happy with the trip today?
This was a very interesting format.
You come back sometime?
Sure I will.
Can we twist your arm into coming back? I had to twist his arm to get him here.
Only if it's a double wrist lock.
Before we go, earlier in the day, we mentioned, briefly mentioned, Arch Ward, the former in the 30s and 40s and I guess early 50s sports editor of the Chicago Tribune, who created the baseball All-Star Game, the college All-Star Game, football game, Golden Gloves. He also, in 1934, in conjunction with the fair, the World's Fair, they had a World Championship match. Is at Wrigley Field, I believe, between Ed Strangler Lewis and Jim Londos, and that may be the last, maybe the last championship for real that they had in Chicago. Londos won. He was a younger guy. Lewis had been around much longer. And I can only find one short clip of that anyway. I wish they'd come out with the whole thing. Are you familiar with that when you heard that, Red? You've heard of it, Tom? No? Yeah. But it was Wrigley Field, right? Anybody else?
One more.
What?
The best last good match I seen promoted in Chicago was Billy Robinson versus Vern Gagne.
Oh, yeah. Boys knew what they were doing. Folks, on behalf of Tom McKenna, Al Opitz, charter member Ken Little, announcer and professor Rich Lang, and our guest stars Ron Smolin, Tom Weiss-Villas, and myself, anonymous Jack Ryan. I want you to remember that history is much more than a book you keep on the shelf.
It keeps on the floor, doorstop.
We want to thank Kevin of Jack FM, WRHS 89.7 FM, for broadcasting our shows over the Ridgewood Radio Network. Recordings of previous Meet the Chicago Historians programs are available for your listening pleasure via the internet at www.windycityhometown.com. We want to thank the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, John Sakanda. On behalf of everyone associated with our Historians program, we wish you the best. This is your announcer, Rich Lang. So long until next time.
You have been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, September the 21st, the year of our Lord, 2015. This broadcast was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVita, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Sakanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Monday, September the 21st, the year 2015. Until next time, friends, be safe, and thanks for listening.